and
Okay, welcome to AI FileMaker and ProofKit. I've redone this session a bit in my brain since the last one. We covered some of those topics, so I'm going to reconfigure a little bit on the fly. And also, I'm going to keep this pretty loose. I actually really like discussion and questions, and hopefully we're going to have time for that throughout. I really don't like to have conversations where I'm just spewing information at you, and I can do that on Zoom, and that's just like, Zoom's fine, but we're here to have a conversation, and so I'm going to encourage, I'll try to stop throughout and ask if there's questions, and I'm happy to take them in the middle. I've been told we have a little extra time as well. We have a two-part series going on here. I'm going to do the first part, and then Eric is going to come up and do the second part on ProofKit. And so he's going to get into a little bit more of the strategic or tactical things you need to learn to work with ProofKit. And I'm going to try to stay more at kind of actually at the bottom and at the top, sort of how to get started, but also how to think about the new world that we're in, and the kinds of coding techniques that we use, and the way to and how we think about approaching agentic engineering. So, so this is a Zen koan from a Zen master from ancient China, and it goes something like this: "Don't decide if it is or it isn't. Do you have the courage to live like this?" And I think this is one of my favorite koans. Koans are just these little meditation things that when we do Zen meditation, we sit and we just hold these in our mind. But so there's lots of them, thousands actually. This one always sticks with me because it's a real common tendency for humans to get an idea and not even be aware of that they have an idea about something, about how the world should be. It should be this way or that way. And what this koan is encouraging you to do is to not make up your mind ahead of time. So don't decide if it is or it isn't. Whatever you're encountering, don't decide if it's good or bad, if you like it or you hate it. Do you have the courage to live like this? Do you have the courage and the capacity to walk through your life with this kind of open attitude? It's pretty hard. One of the great things about these koans is you can kind of carry them around with you, and when you find yourself getting angry or reacting to something and you're not quite sure what it is, you've all had this experience, I'm sure, where you're thinking, something's bothering me and I don't know what it is. I just realize I'm getting angry or I'm getting upset or I'm defending myself or my position. You can just ask yourself, have you decided? Have you decided if it is good or if it isn't good? And maybe you can just let it go and let it open up and let the experience that you're having reveal itself to you. And you might be surprised at what happens. So where we are in the realm of coding agents. I think we've covered this pretty thoroughly in the last in the last session, but the age of typing on the keyboard to enter in arcane spells is over. Now you can just spellcast with your voice. And that's because of coding agents. They can let you do this and work at a higher level of abstraction. And so when we knew that this was coming, which really at the beginning of the year, sort of the November, December, January, February timeframe, it became very clear that this is where the future was going. And at that point, the struggle was we couldn't do any of this with FileMaker. It was very challenging to do. You could do some copy and paste stuff. I had written something called FM Vibex where you could chat with Claude and it would give you back scripts that you could copy and paste. And so there was a lot of this copy and paste stuff, but it was really quite limited. So we basically said, well, we think we can make this work with a web viewer. We know how to write web viewer apps. Can we make something that makes it possible to agentically code FileMaker, at least the UI layer? And so that is what ProofKit is. So here's the website. This meeting is being recorded. Got it. Okay, good. You have that out of the way. And you can download it here. And this has been out for a few months. Lots of people are using it. And it's just got an installer and you run that installer. So that's all you have to do to get started. You are going to need a coding agent. If you don't already have a favorite, I would recommend you start with Claude. It's going to give you the best experience out of the box. It have, depending on the month, the best coding agent. But also Claude Desktop is really strong and it's got a nice UI and it just kind of works. It just kind of works pretty well together. On this webpage, you'll find we have full documentation with a complete getting started, how to install all the prerequisites that you need to actually do coding. Really, this is just working with a coding agent. So when we say installing this stuff, we're basically saying, this is what you need to work with a coding agent, whether it's FileMaker that you're working with or not, you're going to need these things. And so that's the first step. And once you've got that in, we've got, once you do that, you can start with FileMaker. And I'll just run you through a couple of things here. And we'll create a new database, blank, create. So now I'm getting into kind of the nitty gritty just to get you started through the beginning. And these are things that we're actively working on removing so it's even easier to get started. But one of the things you do need in your FileMaker file is an add-on, which is installed by the installer for you. So if you go to add-ons and you click install add-on, you'll see ProofKit, and you just have to put that into the file, and that's pretty much it. And so what that adds is it adds some scripts, and it adds a few layouts, and it adds a table or two. And if you want to dig into that, you can, all the documentation is there. So ProofKit also installs a plugin. So if you go to manage settings, you'll see a plugin here, and you will want to make sure that ProofKit is enabled. And it is also going to install in your Claude a let's get in this way, connector, manage connectors. You can search up here, or should be able to find ProofKit. So there's ProofKit. So this adds an MCP server. Does everybody know what an MCP server is at this point? Okay. So an MCP server stands for Model Context Protocol. And this is a protocol that runs, well, it's similar to, say, HTTP. It's how data gets from the web server to the web browser. But in this case, it's how the coding agents like Claude can communicate with ProofKit. So it's a protocol for communicating between the coding agent Claude and all of ProofKit's tools, and also your FileMaker file. So it is what connects everything together. Okay, groovy? So, okay, so I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit here and open up this solution here. So this is a FileMaker file, and I've already put in the ProofKit add-on. So it's already in, but it's got a bunch of other things too. And I'm not going to go into how I created these tables. We'll have to save that for another day. We're going to be focusing entirely on web UI for this talk. But I do hope you can understand or get the idea that the concepts and the ideas that we're talking about work with web UI. They'll work with, I think there was a demo earlier today that Ivan did from Full City looking at how you can use the patch tool to build FileMaker schema. So this is all the same. We're just focusing today on the web side of it. So it's got, anchor buoy. You've all seen this. You know what this looks like. It does not have any UI layouts at all. So there's no UI in this file. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's get Claude going here. So one of the things I need to do is I'm going to make a new session, and with coding agents, I need to make this a little smaller here. Let's try this. With coding agents, you're going to be operating inside of a folder. I know you think about your FileMaker files living on a server or on in a folder on your desktop, and you're going to need another folder for coding agents because coding agents like to write markdown files and memory files, and they create tools and they get all kinds of artifacts that they collect, and so you're going to have to give your project a home. And so what we're going to do is this is Claude code, and I'm just going to pick my full CRM folder here, I'm basically I'm saying to Claude, this folder is for you. You can do whatever you want in here. It's safe. Trust this workspace. And I'm also going to override all of the permissions which get in the way of it'll ask you, like, is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do that? I'm long past the point where I ever do that. I'm always running with bypass permissions on. The folder is currently empty, however. There's nothing in it yet. So what I have to do is initiate a project. And so I'm going to do that with my voice. Set up a ProofKit web viewer project in this folder, and then take a look at what's inside and give me some ideas about what kind of user interface we might want to build. Now, before I do that, I saw Eric getting wiggly over there. He's telling me, yeah, well, I would have forgotten if I hadn't seen you get a little nervous. So good, thank you. We do need to run this connect to ProofKit MCP. This gets technical. Eric may touch on it a little bit later, but we do need to have this window open. And the short way to think about it is that this little window is just a FileMaker layout with a web viewer on it. And what we've been able to do is convince Claude that the web page that it's building is running inside of that web viewer. And that's super important because agents are really good at fixing the problems if they can see what they're doing, right? And so we'll see how the coding agents will spin up a browser and they will start navigating around, attempting to fix whatever problems they are, or proving that they've actually built a feature. And so one of the things we needed to do to make this work is to make Claude believe that it's running inside a FileMaker web viewer. And that's what that window does. Good? All right. So I'm using Opus 5 here. The Opus 5 is one of Claude's or Anthropic's best models. Fable's even better, but we don't really need to use Fable for this. We're just going to use Opus 5. But Sonnet would probably work just fine here, but this should be a little bit faster and more likely to succeed in one shot. So I'm just going to let that go. And we're going to let this kick off and do its thing. And so this is the part where people say you just let it cook, right? You let it explore and let it figure out what it needs to do. So one of the things you learn when you work with coding agents is if you give them the tools to explore and to try things and to be able to see their errors, they can just figure out what has to happen. And so it is figured out, okay, I have that MCP server gives it a scaffold, gives it a tool that it knows how to scaffold up that folder. So that folder was empty a minute ago. And so it put all this stuff in there, which is essentially the base template for what we're going to use to build our web UI that lives inside of FileMaker. Good so far? Any questions? We have a few minutes while this cooks, so we can... Any questions?
Is the MCP just giving it a bunch of documentation?
The MCP, so you could do skills, which is the other thing, right? And we do a combination of MCP and skills. I don't think I have a clear answer. The industry hasn't decided. The skills and CLIs work, MCPs work. I think there's a clearer defined security model around MCPs. Like one of the things is you can actually, there's a bunch of tools that you get with an MCP server, and you can individually decide whether you want Claude to ask you or not for each individual tool. So it has some of those capabilities that are a little better than, say, a skill, because a skill is just a markdown file, and it might have a command line interface tool, some scripts in it that it can run. A skill is always going to be up to whether to the agent to decide if it wants to follow it or not, right? So that's the other thing is I think tools are, I don't know if I can really make this claim, but I'm going to claim it anyway. I think MCP servers, you get slightly more deterministic behavior, at least in some ways. Whereas if it's just all skills, the agent can decide, like, I don't want to run it that way. And it does occasionally, but it's getting better and better. And usually nowadays I find, especially if you're using Fable, that if it ignores your skills, it's because it's got a better idea. So let me just state this up front. Fable, which is the top model, is a much better software engineer than I am. I mean, better, clearly better than me. And Opus is maybe right on the border, but Fable's really, really good. So nowadays, just you can kind of let the model cook on their own, and you need to give them less and less documentation. So it is, let's see, did it do everything here? So it ran, so it spun up a little. Let's open up the browser over here. So this is the embedded browser that I was talking about. And so this is the default that gets spun up by ProofKit. And this is a web app. And in fact, to prove the point that we can now just deploy this to FileMaker, that's what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to say, let's go ahead and deploy this to my FileMaker file. And so it knows how to take this code that it has generated in this folder and to stuff it into FileMaker. And it will, when it does that, we'll see that UI, it pop up over here. Here it is. So this is now the FileMaker layout with that same UI in it. See that? So we've been able, like I said, we've been building web viewer apps since 1906 when we got the capability to do this, really. So it's been a long time. But what we didn't have was this. We didn't have this closed loop where we can just talk to the agents and the agents can just do all the things that you would have to figure out. Like, so we took, when we built this kit, we took everything we learned from building web viewer apps, over the last, what was 2019 or something like that, 6-7 years. And even before that, I mean, I don't know if Chris is in here somewhere, but we used to build things with Flash that ran in web viewers back in the day. So we've been doing this a long time. And so we took all that knowledge and we took all of the decisions that we made and we put it into this template. And as a result, this is what you get. Yes. Yeah. So this is an opinionated kit, and you can learn about it. And I encourage you to do so in terms of what's there. But what we did is we aimed squarely at what's in the training data for the models, which is a lot of React, a lot of Tailwind. It knows that really, really well. So if you use that, you're getting an advantage because they're extremely well trained on those technologies. Sure. So in layout mode, this is just a web viewer. Yeah. So that's it. Yeah. So this is what we talk about when we say full page web viewer app. So what typically happens to developers as they go on this journey is they think, I'm going to build a little piece of my application because I want to make a calendar or something. I know I can't do that in FileMaker. So they do a little piece and then that goes pretty well. And they do another little piece. And then at some point in the next few weeks, they go, I think we could just rebuild the whole UI. And they talk to the project manager and the project manager is like, are you sure? And eventually the answer is yes, and they do it. And that's what we see. The pattern is eventually people just rebuild the entire UI for the application in a web viewer because it's just so much easier and you get so much better results. That doesn't mean they replace every layout, but it means that the users are primarily experiencing the application through this web layout. So let's go ahead and add a feature. And I can start answering questions again while this is going along. This Zoom thing is really going to get in my way.
You see the wave. You can drag it to the bottom. You can hit more and say hi.
I will try that the next time I see more. Okay, so I'm just gonna have it build a simple contacts viewer. And so it knows, as we can read up here, like it already knows, it did some, it looked and it found like the tables and it looked at the data. So it found out how much data was in there. And it looked at, it's got orgs and contacts. It found all that out when it was doing its exploration. So it already has a pretty good idea of the kinds of things that it can build. And so it's going to just go ahead and do that. And so while that's cooking, I can answer more questions, but also keep an eye on this window over here because you will notice that eventually the agent starts driving it and it will start testing to see if the search works and things. As a matter of fact, let me give it another prompt just to make sure it does a search. Make sure you add a search and test it out. So while that's going, any other questions? Yes, so it is just using whatever you've opened the file up with is the privileges that you have. And so that's another really, really cool thing about WebViewer apps is you're just inheriting the privileges of the logged in user. So when you're developing as full access. When you're a user using this app when it's deployed in FileMaker, you are just getting the same privileges as that account. So you don't have to rethink your entire authentication situation. You're just going to rely on what's already there.
You deploy this to a customer, they want to make a tweet, and they don't
Yeah.
want to have to call you up and say, "Hey, Todd, can you move this one pixel?" But
Sure, they can do that, and you could teach them how to do that, or you could just have them send you a screenshot, and you can then tell your agent to go do it. I mean, if I get a chance, I'll maybe at least diagram some of the way we have these teams of agents working. So it's not just one agent anymore. We have teams, and we use things like GitHub. And in GitHub, if there's an issue, I can just tag Claude and say, "Fix this issue," and it'll check out the repository and fix it and do all the things. So there's definitely ways to streamline that. If your customer wants to make tweaks, they can do this. I mean, it's possible. They'll have to learn a little bit more. You can see it driving the UI there. I don't even have my hands on the wheel. See, so it built that UI. It's got pretty good taste, like it's at least as good a designer as I am. The other thing I would say, another nice thing about Claude is Claude has this other mode called design. It's got Claude design, which is really, really good. And that'll work really well with this. You can do designs and mockups with Claude design, and you can drag those designs back to your ProofKit app and just say, apply this design, and it'll do it for you, right? Yeah. So it's probably by each command here. So it's been working for 3 minutes and it's burned 5,200 tokens. Yeah. And so it'll get, and down at the bottom, we can see how much it is for so this is the context window. We can get into that or not. And these are my limits on Claude based on the plan that I have. Another question. So yes, it does, but not in the way you think, because actually there's tons of triggers that are in every, this is now in webland. There are events. There's literally hundreds of events that you can tie a JavaScript action to or a FileMaker script to, including if you want what we think of as on exit, it's actually called on blur in the JavaScript world. But if you just told Claude, say, "Hey, if the user exits that field there, I want you to run a script," it'll figure that out for you. But you're not based on a FileMaker layout here, to be clear. You're based in, you are now on a web viewer, and that web viewer is not on any particular context. You are context free. This is what we talked about in terms of separating data from the UI. So you've got your logic layer and your data layer, which are your scripts and your graph, your tables. And then you've now got a UI layer that is separate. So and Eric will cover some more of these topics in his part of the session. Anything else? Yeah.
On a design question, could you, I'm pretty novice, you could just pass some down, just let me know. But can you take a screenshot of your existing
Yes.
FileMaker layout, throw it in and say, build me a web app that looks like this?
You can.
Thank you.
And the first time you do it, you might be sad because it'll do it way better than you. So this is part of the process you go through as you learn this. Like, I think, like, I know there's a few people who haven't done this at all yet because I've talked to them. And I would expect you to go through an emotional roller coaster here a little bit. You'll have some times when you go, I don't know what people are going to pay me money to do anymore. And then you're going to have times, we call this AI psychosis, when you believe that you're going to build the next Salesforce in FileMaker, and you'll have it done in a month, and you'll stay up all night long doing it because it's so fun. And also, if you're on a Claude subscription, the reset happens every 5 hours. So you'll be like, I got to get up at midnight and reset the agents so they keep going. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. This is really what happens. If you could search on the internet, you'll find people talking about this. People will say, they'll be like, I haven't seen you in a while, so we haven't talked since AI. So what did you spend your AI psychosis on? It's like, oh, I rebuilt GitHub. Like, those are the conversations you're hearing. So expect some of this. If you haven't been through this, expect a little bit on both sides. And there's, as we talked about earlier, there are things that we have to really think hard about where our value is. And it's not in writing code. It's not. It's not in the actual writing. See, I don't think I've typed a single command in here. Anything else on this? Yeah. PNPM, yes. So that was one of the prerequisites. Yeah, you're gonna need a package manager. And that's, again, with any coding agent you set up, you're gonna basically have to start with that. We have docs that cover how to do that. This hasn't come up yet, but let me just say it and get it out of the way. So a few people have asked me, so we've heard that Claris is going to do this, and so what's going on with ProofKit? Why, are you bummed out that you won't need ProofKit anymore? And so just to make sure everybody's heard this, we built ProofKit, and part of our plan was to take it to Claris and say, we think you should do this. And they basically said, come help us. And so that's the partnership that Ryan has talked about, is like, how can we bring these two things together? So this was always part of our plan. We feel really strongly that this kind of capability needs to be first party and native in the platform. We talked about trust, when you're plugging in AI agents, you want to make sure that you really understand the tools and where they're coming from before you start giving them, credentials to your apps and all that stuff. So we always wanted Claris to build this capability into the platform, and we're thrilled that they're doing that, and they've asked us to help them do this and do other things as well. Question? Yeah, so security. So let me ask the question another way. What, well, maybe not. So the reason, so I say security, but what I mean is, whatever you know about FileMaker security, you still need to know. And is that no, so. Okay. So yes. Okay. So so bad actors, and that's the thing. So we've done what we can to minimize that in terms of, there's something called supply chain attacks, where the packages that are downloaded as part of what gets built here are compromised. There was another big one a couple days ago. 400 packages on NPM were compromised. We have built into ProofKit, into PNPM, it will not allow you to download a package that is less than 24 hours old. And that is because these things are always caught within 24 hours. So typically a new package is published, and within the first 24 hours, it's figured out, and they kill it. So we do basically the best we can to mitigate against that. But these are things again, it's sort of, the trust is a thing now. You really have to know. You really have to, this is part of the thing you're going to have to learn about this new world we're in, is who can you trust?
Security stuff is going to just go ballistic over this.
If they're building anything with any modern web, they're already dealing with this. They're already dealing with it.
The questions to ask us.
Yeah, I mean, they're in as deep, because this is affecting the entire industry. Yeah. So there is definitely no more exposure because we're doing this in FileMaker. And then you get with anything else that you're doing, writing Python or any Node scripts or TypeScript or anything. This is the same. The advantage you get is that you don't have to learn a new security schema. You can just rely on the one that you already know. So that's the big advantage.
Todd, I'm gonna repeat the question, if they don't have my.
Got it. Somebody was asking about, okay, yeah, right here.
Can multiple people use ProofKit to work on the same project?
Yes, so you can, this is a folder.
Repeat the question.
So well, he had a mic, so he should have heard it. But I'll repeat anyway. It's all right, Kevin. Kevin's so nice, man. He's just like, it's like one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. So we brought, you look at this. So one of the things you'll see in here is a git ignore. So this sets up a GitHub repository, a GitHub or a Git repo in the folder for you. You can check this into GitHub and you're now just using standard web practices like you have anywhere else. And the other thing that agents are really, really, really good at is Git. You no longer have to really know how to use Git. You'll learn a couple of simple things like push this to my repo and it'll figure it out and it'll do it. There used to be there was this bane of our existence where we would have this nasty merge conflict when two people would work on the same files and it'd be like, oh no, or like I got to rebase, really hard. And you have to learn all these arcane command lines. You don't have to do anything like that anymore. If you get a merge conflict, you just say, hey, Claude, fix the merge conflict, and it fixes it. So that whole barrier to entry around version control is really gone. You just have to use your agents and they will do it fine for you. All right, I'm going to jump ahead a bit, and we'll have more time for questions. So let me tell it to stop the server. That was a new dialogue. Now it tells you to stop the server. I love it. Let me do, just tell it to, I'm not supposed to type. Stop the dev server, please. You notice I said please there. So people have done studies on this, and you will get better results if you're nicer to your agents. You absolutely will.
When I said, please stop being polite to your system because it's using up tokens.
Well, maybe using up tokens, but you get better results. And the other thing is it's just good practice, right?
No, I get that. I get that. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh? Because I want to live in a world where people are nice to each other. So what? I'm still talking. So why don't I just build up the habits of being nice, right? And so then I just remember to say please and thank you to people as much as I do here. Yeah.
So it's a serious question. I've had if I don't get what I want when I ask for AI, and then the second time I kind of get what I want, I start feeling like, okay, I've asked for enough. I shouldn't take up any more of this. Like if I were talking to you, right? And then at some point I might say, I'm asking for too much. I need to back off and just say thank you. Have you run into that yourself?
Not really. I think one of the nice things about, especially with your voice, is you can just ramble. You just share your hopes and dreams. Really, this is what I really want. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. Here's the techniques I think you should try to use. Check on these resources, and this will be really cool if we get it done. Yeah. It's not an issue. I think if you're not tokens and the cost of tokens are a thing, but I think if you've not used AI, you're way more sensitive to it than you need to be. I probably spend close to $1,000 a month on tokens, and I don't care one bit. I literally do not care. I will spend more if I can figure out how to use them better. Yeah.
Do you think that'll change next year or two? All the financial changes in the world that it might start getting expensive?
So good question. I think there's a number of things at play that I think we're going to cross in the next year. The open source models are really only a few months behind, and they're way cheaper, 10 times cheaper in some cases. And they're not only all from China now. There's now US labs releasing open source models.
Then these people might be switching models.
They will be, yeah, they could be switching models. And that's important, right? We actually do not want to live in a world where it's only Microsoft and Anthropic. That's not a place we want to be in.
Does that imply like a learning curve every time you have to do that?
It's like working with different teammates. They all have personalities, you learn them. It happens every time a new version of the model comes out, it's like a little different, but it's not really anything more like, getting comfortable with a new teammate, something like that.
Just say please.
Just say please. Yeah. I want to be clear. So some people are objecting to me treating the AIs nicely. I don't believe that they're conscious or sentient. Like, and I'm not suggesting. Like, I think there are people out there that have formed really unhealthy relationships with AI, and I'm not suggesting you do that. But I've just noticed that for myself, I get better results when I'm nice.
Say please like right now, when it's done.
Right,
Don't just say please.
Oh yeah,
You can just say please at the end of your sentence.
sure. Yeah, I mean, good job. Actually, people are there. I mean, we could spend a lot of time on this, and I don't want to. So let's move on to some other things. So I want to talk a little bit more about the next steps. So let's see. How do I want to set this up? So I want to get into a project I ran earlier today, and so this is the same file we just looked at, except I built out an entire UI. And it's got all this stuff on it, right? All these things. So this is the dashboard. It's got a dashboard. It's got a deals. It's got a Kanban board that works. You can drag things around, right? So I built this. So it took about 2 hours to run, and it took me about maybe 90 minutes to come up with the spec, but it took me about 30 seconds to kick off, and then I walked away. And this is what I got. So let's take a look at what that spec looks like, because this is the next step. So first, you're just talking to your agents about what you want them to do. The next step is you talk to your agent to plan what you want to do. And you come up with, you let it research the code, you give it links to documents or particular UI components on the web that you want to use. And you talk to Claude and you say, this is what I want to make. You've got access to the FileMaker file. You can see all the tables and data in here. Let's build out a full CRM. I'd like you to build for the deals page. I'd like you to do a list view and a Kanban view. And you just talk all that out and it comes up with a spec. And also I've added another round to this, which is, so that's the first step. The second step, which is included in here, is you come up with an execution strategy. And so this is where you now start to use, so first you get your spec of what you want to build, and then you give your agent a plan where you basically, in this case, what I'm saying is the first agent I give the command to, so it would be, say, Opus 5 or Fable. You are the orchestrator. You're going to look at this spec and you're going to divide it up into tasks, and you're going to assign those tasks to sub-agents. And you're going to use different models for this sub-agent. So Fable is quite expensive. So I don't want Fable to do all the work here. I want Fable to break it down into tasks, and I want to give it to Sonnet-based sub-agents. And then I want to give, when each sub-agent is done with its work, I want to use Opus 5, in this case, to check the work and to make sure that it met the task requirement. And if it finds any issues, it hands it back to Sonnet to complete it. And then at the very end, I ask Fable to do the whole big review on it and make sure everything's correct. And so so now I have a team of agents working together on this spec. And so they were, with this spec here, which is not that long, but a couple pages, it was able to build that entire app in about 2 hours, 90 minutes or so, to do that entire thing. Yeah, in the back.
Background.
Yes.
As Opus.
Yes. Yeah. So the question was, can you have the agent basically run things in parallel or in the background, essentially? And it will do that too. Sub-agents, that's right. And so what that lets you do is it lets you extend your Fable budget, because your Fable budget will burn up fast, and it's because it has its own reset limits here. So I've got 5%. I've used up 5% of my weekly allowance of Fable. So I want to use Fable just for the important things, and then I want to give it to Sonnet to do the work, and then I want to give it to Opus to check the work, and then I give a final review back to Fable to look at the whole thing. Because one of the things is like each task is doing its work discreetly, and each reviewer is reviewing just that work. But at the end of that process, Fable looks at the whole thing and says, we did the same thing 3 times here. Let's just make one. Let's just optimize it. And it will do that. It'll find bugs. It'll be like, oh, this guy did it wrong. And it'll just fix things as it goes along. And so this is what we call agentic engineering. Right. So now we are beyond just talking to an agent and having it do its thing. We are now setting up runs where the agents are doing multiple things. They're doing it in parallel or in series as it decides it needs to do. Like it'll say, I can do these 5 tasks in parallel, and then when they're done, I can have to do these next ones in sequence. And it'll just do all that. You just give it some basic idea of what you want it to do, and it will go and do that.
Are you using FileMaker for the basic like CRUD operations that like you got a table of categories or something? Do you edit those in FileMaker, or do you build web interfaces?
Yeah, so this is all web entirely, 100%. There's nothing in here that's not web. So where's the file? Here's the file. So if you go into people, you can edit and delete and save all right here. It just does it. Yeah, it does basic CRUD for you. And I told it actually in that prompt, I said, I want you to do for every object, I want you to make a list view and a detail view with save, edit, and delete. And so it just built all that out. Under the hood, what it's using is the execute data API script step, which can read and write to single files, which is great. If you want to do something more complex, and in this case, you have to do it if you want to do a Kanban board, you're going to need to write a FileMaker script. I think Eric's going to cover that, so I'm gonna just push that aside for the moment. But you definitely get to write FileMaker scripts. They're still a very critical part of your logic layer, and basically what Chris was saying. Your basic CRUD, the agent's just going to do for you. But if you need to do a bunch of things like in a transaction, you got to write a script. And then the agent knows how to call the script. So you can just say like in this prompt, I said when you make the Kanban board, there's already a script written for you that will take care of the mutation or the changes that you have to do to save the Kanban board changing. It's actually quite complicated to do a Kanban board persistence. Question in the back.
So,
Can you have the agents tell you at the end of it what FileMaker scripts you need to create to support their operations?
Probably if you ask it, like, what do you think I should, like, because sometimes what'll happen is it'll start with, like, the first time I did the Kanban board, I ever ran a Kanban board with it. In order to change, when you do this, what it actually does, when I drop this, it changes a sort order field on this record, and then it reserializes every record so that it all stays sorted in the same way. So it actually has to touch this entire column here, right? So the first time it did that, it did it with just a whole bunch of individual updates, which is not great because any one of those could fail, and that would be bad. You'd be in a state where some of the changes you needed to have go through happened and some didn't. So then I built a script and I told it to use that script. But if you notice it creating a whole bunch of CRUD operations, you can say, hey, you know what? I think I can write a FileMaker script where I can manage the updates for you, and then you can just run that script. It'll know how to do that. What else?
How's your product priced and licensed?
It's free.
Free.
Yeah. It's free. It's also, I mean, we never planned to do anything but get Claris to build it for us. So that was the main thing we built it for. And, well, I should say also for our team. We made it for our team. Yeah.
So Todd, in the MCP world, you writing the script, then essentially you provided a tool for it to use, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can give it scripts to do all kinds of things. And it also natively knows how to run execute SQL. So you can ask it general data questions and it'll do stuff like that.
run the WebDirect?
Does. I'll let Eric show it later. It's awesome in WebDirect, just to say. So what do you guys think? Like for those of you who aren't web developers, do you think maybe you could give this a try? Yeah? Thumbs up from Taylor. We're doing good here. Yeah, somebody back there.
Question, would you use this technique on a pre-existing solution? And if so, does that mean throwing away that original solution and saying, here's some sample layouts, here's the data structure, et cetera, but recreate this in a what?
Yeah, I don't think you need to do that. You may do some reconstruction. I think and Eric will talk a little bit more about this in real world projects, but I think if you think about this if you think about the web UI portion of this agentic developer stuff we're doing right now, I would think about it as you're going to probably end up rebuilding your UI over time. And you may have to tweak your scripts, you may have to tweak your layouts, you may throw out a lot of layouts. And remember, layouts are the source of most of FileMaker's performance issues are layouts because of the relationship graph dependencies and all the stuff you do there. So, and it's also if you've done Save as XML and you look at the layout catalog, it's the largest and most complex part of a FileMaker system is the layouts. So you'll probably prune those down to just the ones you still need. And I should say also, like, the interesting part about this is, like, in this case, I'm clicking on here and this will drill me into this detail record. But one of the great things about FileMaker web viewers is if you wanted to instead pop a card window on top of this with your normal FileMaker form that had just a save button and edit button, that works too. Like, you can actually show a card window on top of a web viewer as a dialog. So if you wanted to, you could still build all of your edit screens with FileMaker layouts and just have the rich UI part be the stuff that people are looking at. Way in the back. Let's start way in the back. You're way in the back.
I've been curious about like a scenario. As FileMaker developers, one thing that we run into a lot is, new people coming to us, or citizen developers, do-it-yourself developers that have built these vast, sprawling, horribly built systems. And then part of our job is to like rebuild them and restructure them. I just wondered if you had any of those experiences using this to kind of orchestrate those kind of reconstructions of a bad file. And like how does AI deal with looking through a data structure that's already pre-existing?
Yeah.
It's just terrible.
It's actually really good at it. That's the good news. Like, it'll understand it way better than you. The question was, will AI be able to understand these really horribly designed, crazy 1600 table occurrence graphs? And the answer is yes, it will be able to understand it. The limitation of the tools that we have in market right now make this a challenging thing to be super useful. If we get full agentic access into FileMaker, so it can actually make changes to the schema really easily, then I don't see a reason why you can't use it to radically refactor. In fact, one of the things that AI is really good at is refactoring. Really good at it because you have to ask yourself, where is this thing used? It doesn't. It knows where the things are used. It will find it, figure out it, it will fix it. So it really comes down to how good can we get that agentic access to be. And right now, outside of web viewers, we don't really have that super fast, fluid agentic access, but this is what Claris is working on. So we hope that we get there. Well, Mike.
Does ProofKit handle record locking, like by opening the records or anything
No.
like that?
So the question does ProofKit handle record locking? And the answer is no. Very important thing I mean, you could if you wanted to, but it would be really hard and not very useful. I think one of the things that we started doing a long time ago when we started building apps that had web front ends or disconnected back ends, like disconnected front ends, like Go files that had to run offline, is we stopped relying on record locking for a lot of things in terms of like managing the user experience. And we built things more separated in a lot of ways, you know, where we would have UI layouts that data was entered and edited on, and then it would pass that data to a script. And that way that script could be used by a front-end web app or by the FileMaker file or by a FileMaker Go app that wasn't connected, right? That was just making an insert from URL call to the data API. So we had practice in doing this. We've been writing what we call context-free logic for a long, long time. And it served us well for many, many reasons. And so it's something that we haven't really had an issue adopting, but you will when you do this new way, because you are not writing on any layout. You're writing on a context-free empty table, essentially, when you're doing this work this way. Yeah, front row. I'll get to you next. Yeah, go with the mic. Okay, we got it.
I think, let's say I'm used to using fast API and a SQL backend or no SQL backend, and then using React as front end. The agent writes code pretty seamlessly, and a lot of open source code is also available for getting upon.
That's right.
So how would like in the future, let's say you have access to FileMaker every component, do you think the agent would work equally well as compared to an open source or a pretty ready available stack?
So in terms of all of the web UI stuff, it will work very well because we actually built everything to work like it was working with an open source project. So when it actually requests data from FileMaker, it's making what it sees as a fetch, just like any other fast API based system or anything like that would do. So in the web UI, all that's built in because that's one of the reasons why we focused on building web UIs this way, because there's nothing that's better represented in the training data than front-end web code. It's the best by far. Yeah, so in the back end, what we've done is we've tried to, in terms of getting the data in and out, like I said, we tried to match it up that way. For other FileMaker components, my experience, let's start with tables. My experience has been that the closer things are to standard, the better it will be. So tables is actually pretty good because database tables are database tables. There's a few special things about FileMaker, but it's not a lot, and it understands that quite well. It understands relationships. It understands the relationship graph pretty well. And it also understands calculations, because calculations are just a functional programming language, which it's seen dozens and dozens of. So it doesn't really have any problems in that area. Scripts, we have to do a little bit more, and layouts, we're gonna have to do a lot more to get the native layouts to work that well. But I think these are surmountable problems. I don't see them as being major roadblocks, but it does explain why we anchored on web UI right away, because we knew that would be the easiest thing to do. Yeah.
So on the Google, where you're like the layout where we have customers that, you built contact database, does it look our existing customers have been with us for 20, 30 years and they're looking for find and they want to do a find?
Yeah.
Are we gonna use SQL for that? So this find suite, are we gonna build them a little part that pops up?
Yeah, so let's see. So I've got a search deals thing here. So I think it needs whoops, hang on. So it found those pretty well. So the agents understand searching really well. And the requests that it's making to FileMaker, it just sees as any other web query it knows how to do in a million different ways.
So when our 30-year-old customers will hit find.
Yeah, so you're just gonna tell your agent to build you a find interface and it's gonna do it. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, you just have to tell it what you want. Yeah, it'll do it. This stuff isn't like 70 years of computer science is packed into these brains. They've seen it all. Yeah, you want Command F, you want a Command K command bar, Well, matter of fact, I might have built one into this one. I don't know. Yeah, no, that's open quickly, so it didn't do that. But you just tell it, and like this is the part where you go, oh, it already knows how to do all the things that I thought I was special to know how to do. And I mean, this is like your first experience. It's like, oh, it knows how to do that. It's not really a problem. Rats, you know. You're gonna have to go through this, but it will do it. And also understand that what you're looking at today is as bad as these things are ever going to be. The next time they come out, they will be better. By this time next year, we're in a whole different world as to what these things can do. So if you think you're going to outsmart these guys, no, it's not happening. You're going to have to look for the other areas we've been talking about, where to make your, where to make your stand, so to speak.
Know how to do and searches in order.
Yeah.
To file.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kinds of things. And right now, they're kind of getting it for free in a otherwise horrible database, right? The fields are there and they know how to search them. And so it's going to be more of a matter of like, getting the agent to build something that my client's going to know how to.
They'll be able to do it. And if not, the other thing you could do is like, if there's some like specific layout that they're really used to doing finds on, just pop it open in a card window and they'll just do what they've always done. Like that's the beauty of this. Like we have a page on our docs about hybrid apps, super powerful. You get all of the capabilities of FileMaker in here, including that crazy complex find on that table view there, that list view that's 30 columns long. You can do that. You can do that. It's not really an issue. You could do it in a card window and it will work even on WebDirect. You could do it in another window and actually, I don't remember what happened on WebDirect with new windows. Does it still open a new tab? I don't remember. I'll have to check on that. But a card window doesn't. So even in WebDirect, you can have a card window that takes over the whole screen. And the user doesn't know. Like it'll still seem like the same app. You can still do all the crazy stuff you wanted. You can still make all the weird PDFs you want. You can still do all of those things. None of that is removed. You can even do things like access the local hard drive, which is very hard to do with a web app. Right? You can't do that, right? You can use plugins. And by the way, every one of you can write a plugin in this room. If you wanted to, you download the plugin SDK and you spend some tokens on Claude, you could write a FileMaker plugin in a weekend. You could all do it, every one of you. So you can write plugins. You can connect to weird hardware. You can do all those things. It's all there and all possible now. Yeah.
What's the current state of the art for, you mentioned legacy systems in terms of filtering up old interface, things like that, reproducing them better. What's the state of the art for normalizing legacy data? Imagine the world's worst, or not.
Yeah.
Terribly organized data.
Yeah. So one of the awesome things about AI is it's really good at untangling that, because you could basically say like, hey, let's build a better data model. Maybe you start making a cleaner data model. And then you say, I need to take this data that's over there in that crappy model, and I need you to put it over there in this good model. And it will write you scripts in Python or TypeScript that connect to data APIs or OData, and they will just do that data migration for you. Data migration has always been the bane of our existence, yeah? No more. Just tell the AI to write it, it will write it. You really don't have those problems. So all those things where you thought, oh my God, the amount of code I'm going to have to write and the things I'm going to have to figure out about this, all of that is gone. The AI could do that stuff for you quite well.
So this might be a question for Eric later, but what kinds of real world issues have you run into when you deploy these kinds of solutions? Performance?
Yeah, there are. So there are things that like, if you need to pull 50,000 records into a web viewer to display some super impressive data visualization, you can do it, but you're going to have to learn some more things. So stuff like that, because the execute data API is you're only running one script at a time, and you really don't want to do more than 100 records at a time. So you can imagine how long it's going to take you can do some tricks. You can like pre-cache things and bulk load it, shove it in there, but that's where that's gonna be like the primary one, is very large data sets are going to be the challenge. Devin.
Are you finding that you're in FileMaker tables making it as JSON field so that you sort of got this sitting there and get you halfway there on that?
Interesting. So there's another interesting hybrid approaches you can take here. So you can do that, but you don't really need to. But that does remind me of another thing we get for free out of this is NoSQL. Somebody mentioned NoSQL databases before. You could make a FileMaker table that has that just has an ID and a text field, and you can store whatever you want in there. So you can now have an ad hoc NoSQL table in your solution. You can find it by ID instantly. So if it's a situation where you always know the ID, or you can make up a unique identifier for it, whatever it is, and you can instantly load that payload, whatever's in that field, and read and write to it. If you need to do queries, you've got your JSON field. You can write a stored calculation that indexes whatever field you want out of that JSON payload, and you can use that to do very fast searches.
So are you doing this?
Yes. If you look at auto deploy, some of you may be using auto deploy. If you look at auto deploy's data model, it's got like, I don't know, 6 or 8 tables in it. They're all JSON tables. So they have the sort of audit logging fields, the created at, modified at, kind of thing. And they have JSON payload, and that's it.
Hey, Todd, are you using, or are you going to use, or do you even need to use any longer the persistent data store?
Persistent data store, yes. So that is what we're using to store the HTML. And the reason, so the HTML gets bundled up and it's put into, everybody knows about persistent data storage? It's the coolest feature in FileMaker 26, right? It's awesome. It can be used for many, many things. One of the things it can be used for is you've got this list persistent data IDs, and we have a ProofKit is basically you could think of, it's sort of like a NoSQL database, or it's a named value pair kind of situation where you get a bucket. In this case, we call it ProofKit. That's our bucket. And inside you've got IDs. So this is full CRM is the name of this app. So if I make another function here and I go get persistent data ID, and I put in the name of the bucket, which is ProofKit. Sorry, typing full CRM, and then I evaluate that. That's the HTML, right? So what's nice about persistent data storage is this is the first data structure we get that is in part of the schema. And if you look at Save as XML, you will see it in the catalog. There's a persistent data catalog. It is not storing this in fields. Why is that cool? Whoever answers first gets a cough drop. Yell it out. Who said cloning? Cloning, right? Because now, so prior to 26, if you did this same thing, you'd have to put the HTML payload. This is the code, by the way. This is what it looks like. It's huge. I don't know. It's way too big. Doesn't matter. It's just giant, and it doesn't matter. Like literally there's, do we have size limits? I think we have hit them, but they're huge. Like I wouldn't really, there's no, like, it's megabytes. It can be megabytes. So that's persistent data. And so the old days, we would store this in a field, and we would use like we'd use like a SQL function to read the HTML into the web viewer calc. And if you clone the file, bye-bye. There goes all of your front end code. So this is now part of the schema, which means if you do a clone and migrate it to production, you get the code stays. So it's really awesome. And it can be used for many, many things. And somebody must be doing a presentation on, are you going to talk about persistent data?
I am.
There we go. Todd's going to talk about it, and it'll be great. Somebody over here we haven't heard from before, so let me go over here.
Is it possible to configure ProofKit to not use a public model, but instead use a local model or a private model and say AWS Bedrock?
Yes. Because we're only using whatever coding agent you're using. It works with any coding agent that can use MCP. So that's it. So if you're using Amazon's coding agent or Google's or Codex or Cursor or Goose or Open Code, they all do the same thing. They all use MCP and they can all choose from whatever models you have access to. I think I was getting to that. I never said that somebody, but we got sidetracked just to finish that from a long time ago. What's going to happen over the next year is the local models or the smaller models or the open source models are going to cross with Apple's hardware, and you'll be able to get the kind of performance that we were getting. I'm not sure we get Fable, but we won't get Fable performance, but we'll get, say, Opus 4.5 or Opus 4 performance on a very expensive, but on a Mac. You'll be able to do that. I would expect within a year, 18 months at most. So get a Mac Studio, which if you try to order them right now, they're not available. Because everybody's buying them for this reason. People are running coding models on Mac Studios. Yeah, in the back.
Yeah. So right now in ProofKit, when you're having a UI that needs a calculation, summary, total, whatever, is it doing that itself in the JavaScript, or is it finding a field?
Yeah. A lot of FileMaker fields are for display, right? We all know this. I'm doing it forever. The web platform is way better at that particular feature than FileMaker will ever be, because it can do the stuff at just incredible speeds in terms of making virtual fields or calculation fields or summaries. It can do all that stuff super fast. So you will need way less display fields or summary fields. You still might use them, but you won't need them. So all of the fields you create for UI tricks, you don't need those anymore. And those are all adding weight to the performance of your solution, and you don't need them. We're getting close to time. We're actually over, but people said I needed to kill some more time for the people on DIGFM, so they wouldn't have any blank Zoom space or something. But I'd like to cover a couple more slides before we go. So let me have one last question on what we've been talking about so far. Down here in front.
If that API,
We can do it. What do you got? Yeah.
I know that Claude in particular doesn't know that connection on some of those pieces, like in Sage, for example. Sage and Tech, there's this purchase order module, and Claude knows very little about it and cannot. Finally, he says, "I just don't know what to do to help you anymore." You know, and so you go on, and I write them all. I write them all by hand, anyways. But how do APIs?
So I would be very surprised if Claude Opus or Claude Fable can't figure out your Sage APIs. I would be very
obviously tried it in that particular.
Yeah,
I can't in Claude Desktop right now.
Yeah, so Claude Desktop should be able to do it too. Well, so but all you may need to do is point it at the documentation for Sage.
I did.
I would still be very surprised. I'd love to see where the problems are, because I haven't seen it fail on anything any documentation it can read. As long as the documentation is accurate, which it might not be.
That's what.
Yeah, it may not be, but you'll also find that Claude, especially Fable, is extremely persistent. Like, it'll read the documentation, it'll say, well, there's a weird error here, let me try something else. It'll start exploring the API on its own and figuring it out. People have used these AIs to basically decode device drivers that haven't worked in 40 years because they just kind of pick away at them. So I don't believe, like, I'd be very, very, very surprised that it can't do it. Unless it's literally not documented correctly. That's the only thing I can think of. Yeah, well, there you go. Well, that could be a problem. But if it can explore, if it's got docs, like as an example, there's a database called SQLite. It's what powers everything on your iPhone. That's all, right? So Cursor, one of the leading companies, took the documentation for SQLite and re-implemented it entirely from the documentation in a different programming language. They did it in Rust instead of C. So just by reading the documentation, it recreated the code itself. It made a new copy of the binary. So they're very good at this. So that's what I would say. I should probably try to wind down here because we're getting close to the end. And Eric's got a lot of cool stuff to show, and I think you want to see it. So let me get back to my slides and we'll wind down here. We didn't know how to get through any of them. Let's see where we go. So I'll just briefly just kind of sum up. What just happened? A lot of really cool stuff. I hope you agree. So this is what I talked about, where you get in this loop where you're just talking, the agent's fixing, it can see what it's doing, and it just goes until it's done. We talked a lot about why Claris, but let me spell this out. So if you're going to build something in a modern web stack, you have to make at least 5 decisions here. Authentication's cut off. Deployment, front end, back end, database authentication. You're gonna have to decide which of these technologies, and then you're gonna decide whether you want to use Vercel for deployment, Cloudflare, AWS, Netlify. There's about 50 or 60 other options that are totally viable in that column. Front end, you got to decide. Back end, you got to decide. Database, you got to decide. Authentication, you got to decide. You got to make all those decisions, and then you have to learn the little nuances about each one to make sure that your agent doesn't get you in trouble. We've done it. We build on this stack. We know how to do it. We can do it, but I can tell you right now, it's a pain in the butt to set up a new project because we have to go to each one of these services, log in, set up the thing, get the tokens, blah, 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 blah. Crazy. So what we're seeing is there's a whole new crop of startups that are basically trying to build what FileMaker already is, which is a vertical stack that includes all of those pieces. So this is Y Combinator, which is one of the most famous startup incubators in the land, and they just announced their new batch for this year. And here's an example. Agents make it easy to build personal tools for yourself or your team, but deploying, securing, sharing that software is still far more complicated than creating it. So they're going to build a cloud for small business that could remove the complexity and make the bespoke tools as easy to share with colleagues as Google Doc. That sounds to me like FileMaker.
Yeah. So FileMaker's got 40 years head start.
That's right. So I just want you to think about that people are looking to solve this problem. FileMaker has solved this problem. I don't want to oversell this. I don't want you to say like, this means FileMaker is going to win. I don't know. Nobody knows. Anybody tells you, like Chris said earlier, nobody can tell you what the next few years are going to bring. But what this tells me is that the Claris platform is right in the sweet spot of what agents like to do. We just need to make sure we get the agentic access that can do everything that we need within the file, and it should work pretty well. FileMaker has it all. We talked about this 100 times. Like, this is really true. Agentic development, I talked about this. So this is actually now how I develop. I haven't talked about this a little bit. So I will do a spec. I will spend some time with Claude. I'll come up with a spec. I have 4 Mac Minis in my garage with a data center, solar panels on the roof, Tesla battery on the side, and I spawn up 4 Claude code sessions or cursor sessions, and I give each one of them a spec, and I say go. And then I spend the next few days just checking on each one of them as they're going along. So this is what's getting towards what you might hear people call a software factory, where you're building the thing that builds the thing. So you're not talking to agents that are building the software, and you're not talking to agents that are planning the software. You're building a system that you just feed in feature requests and bug reports, and it plans, and it doles out, and it does all of the process in there. People are doing this. The models are now good enough that this is actually beginning to work. Some word you might hear is dark factory, which is kind of like what happens with the robot factories in Japan and the Amazon warehouses where it's just all robots. They don't have lights on. And so when you hear dark factory in terms of software, that means that nobody's actually reading the code. It's just the system that's built. It gathers inputs from customers, from stakeholders, from bug trackers, from analytics, and it plans and builds and deploys the software on its own. We already did the full CRM. So what part of the process is now gone? I hope you understand that typing is gone. Like, you literally don't need to type. And so look for opportunities to not type, look for opportunities to talk and plan and get things set up to run for you. What part of the process is still there? It's a lot of what I'm now thinking of in my head is product shaping. Just because you can do anything doesn't mean the things you build automatically have value. And this is another one of those things where you're going to be like, oh, because it used to be, and really for most of my entire FileMaker career, getting something to work meant somebody would pay you just to get something to work, whether or not it was exactly the right shape or exactly the right product. As long as you could build something that actually did the thing A to B, you got paid. Now, getting it to work isn't the problem. So that means everybody can get it to work. So now you have to think about much harder about what it is that your customers need or your company needs and figure out how to make that. Because that's where the value is now. It's no longer in getting the code to work. It's now in getting the product right that produces value for the stakeholders and the end users in whatever system you're working in. So the last thing I'll say is, when this started to work for me, it really reminded me of those days when I was running a small business and I had a FileMaker system, and suddenly I realized that I could automate that business. I could build the entire thing. I understood enough about relationships. I could understand enough about business. I knew about customers, and I knew about invoices, and I knew about sales, and I knew about leads, and I could see the entire thing in FileMaker. And there was that, I'm sure everybody went through some moment like that euphoria of is that I can actually make this thing. And that's what it feels like to me today, is it's like anything is possible. So if there's one last thing I can say, it's dream bigger, think beyond what you're comfortable and capable, what you've been capable of doing before. I really do mean that every one of you can make a FileMaker plugin. Just give it a couple days, you can do it. You want to rebuild that FileMaker system with a new UI, you'd be surprised at how fast it will go. Much more is within your grasp than ever before. And that part is super, super fun. So come along for the ride. It's a blast. Thank you. So we're going to take about 15 minutes, and then Eric's going to come up and he's going to get a little more practical about how some of this stuff shows up in the real world. I got to just, wax philosophical about a bunch of things, and
Thank you, Todd.
thanks everybody.
We already covered a lot of it.
No, but you can dig in. You can dig in and show.
There we go. Is that it? So good. Like you said, he had less. I was asking him. Hey, Taylor, say hi.
Hello, everybody. Hey, Taylor. AI is awesome.
Got the approval. Now we can go move ahead. Watching the closed captioning, it's picking up random words from people speaking here. That's right. You guys can unmute yourself and talk for now.
Thanks, Eric, for making this available. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Let's see, who was that?
Joe.
Joseph.
Joe.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll also be on at 1:30 tomorrow and Sunday, 1 o'clock, whatever, somewhere around that time. I think the actual session is tomorrow. That Christian Schmitz will be on tomorrow. Oh, Under the Hood sessions with Clay Makel and David Simpson will be leading that, and other engineers I think will be here. So we have we have one Under Hood session tomorrow and another one on Sunday. Well, maybe two. They were talking about plugin programming. Clay Makel will be with Christian Schmitz and Jesse Barnum on that tomorrow, on Sunday, sorry. So
Yeah.
So yeah, all that's, if you go to the community group, DIGFM, it's got the whole list.
We'll go find a link.
Yeah, sure, you can find it. Yeah, I should find a link, shouldn't I? That one. It's gonna win.
Hello, well, that's
Yeah.
There we go. The whole schedule's right there.
Yeah, then we got. Yeah. So, and it just,
And Eric Luce is really just gonna be doing the second half of more ProofKit stuff. Oh yeah, I guess we should make sure we can share.
everything that.
There he is. Go walk over there and see how he's doing.
So Heidi, what kind of solar advocacy are you doing? If you're there.
just love how he described their setup at home. Get the solar panels on the roof, it's like, you know, I think you have your own data center.
Okay, because you know what
I got you.
I let him in.
Oh, you're muted. You're coming muted.
I'm talking to you. Library and all of that stuff.
Oh, they have
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Let us know if you can hear him. Okay.
Good audio. Yep.
I wanted to like not do the speaker, but I guess I'm muted anyway.
Audio test was okay?
Audio was good.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. Should be all set. Should be all set. I guess I could even do this. You guys want to see? Look at this. Look at that FileMaker layout, guys. How cool is that?
Nice.
Todd made.
Oh, you want to see a good layout? I have a feeling that this layout got slightly broken in my demo. Wait a minute, right here. Dude, hold on. Oh, silly me. Oh, silly me.
So much of that.
So the thing is, that thing was set up right there. You don't have that entire. I don't think the entire. It's Katie Rose. It's not. I don't need it.
Hey.
So maybe Jason on the
I want to make a button.
all their history, right? And I said, yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, so I looked at that. Right, yeah, so we have all these things.
Hey, say hi. Yeah, can you see me? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I can. Hi, everybody.
We can see you. Your name says Eric Matthews, though.
Did you, yeah, did you turn it around? And see my booth?
Give a commercial.
I don't know if you can see my, my booth setup. I'm limited on, PowerPoint, but, yeah, this is my table. Mac Studio, 27-inch monitor, showing off latest features in FM Pro Migrator.
Cool.
And I'm actually kind of in the middle of eating a snack.
So David, you're talking about setting up all those Mac Minis. That's what you got going on over here, right?
I have a Mac Studio with 512 gig. This is a configuration you can't buy anymore. I just got this server back from a customer project where they thought that it was going to take 16 years to rewrite their project. I sent them the Mac Studio, sent them FM Pro Migrator, configured it with some local models. They had to run this in their data center. And they sent the server back in a little bit less than a year. Their 16-year project was done in less than a year. So the customer was absolutely ecstatic.
What'd you migrate them to?
They were migrating from 500,000 lines of code in Visual Fox Pro and 350 forms and reports into C#, .NET, XAML, C#. And so they were ecstatic. They thought it was going to take forever, and they got the bulk of it done in less than a year.
Cool. So that was Fox Pro to .NET C# or something?
Yeah, .NET C#, and their data was already in SQL Server. So, because Fox Pro has been discontinued like at least 15 years. In fact, I am standing here right next to Ken Levy, who used to be product manager for
2004 was the last version of Fox Pro 9.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so it's not even supported anymore.
Right.
It works, but it's not supported.
Yeah. I'm going to step out and go take a little break before this session starts. But I just wanted to say hi to everybody.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Aside from your QR code here, so stuff in the lower right of your slides very much. Okay, so I've got
the camera. Yeah, that's just our website. It's not a big deal. Yeah, there's nothing else really over there. I could even move it if you really want to, but yeah.
You'll probably do some more production stuff.
All right.
And we're still recording. Yep. And I will have to unmute Eric here. Oh no, he's already unmuted himself. Good. All
I'm gonna
right.
get started. You want me to wait? Oh.
If we show some of the new ones, can you show the responsive and the light and dark stuff?
I think that's, yeah.
Okay, good. I forgot to show you.
All right, it's 4:30 on the dot, so we gotta get, no, I don't. All right. I'm curious, so how many of you are new to this session? Didn't watch what Todd just showed off? Anybody? A few? Oh, goodness. Well, this is gonna be harder than I thought then, because he covered quite a lot of cool stuff that I hope I'm not repeating too much of, but hopefully you got the big picture here, and now we're gonna dive into a few more technical details of how this all actually works. We're talking about agentic development, right? What does it mean to build with agents, and what can we do with them, and that kind of stuff. Before I dig into it, I do want to start with a story. We have a bunch of FileMaker developers on our team, and it was about February that they started a new FileMaker project. It was the classic story that we've all heard before. A customer comes to us, and they've got their business running on spreadsheets. And they said, we need, paper and spreadsheets. They said, we need some help here. And so we started them off on a FileMaker project. We started building out FileMaker layouts and scripts and designs. We're working with them, all kinds of things. This was actually they gave us permission to share all this. They're called Royal Windows and Doors. They're a door and window, like custom build sales companies. And so one of the things that they needed in their quoting process was this relatively complex quoting system for like, how do you quote a custom build of a door, right? There's all these kind of options and different features, and depending on what you pick here, it's very, very complex. So first, before we even started that in FileMaker, we went to Claude and said, hey, Claude, can you just help me reason through all of this? What kind of data model do I need for this? This is the real story of our FileMaker developer. Went to Claude and spent, maybe a day or so just kind of working back and forth, getting the data model. And at the end of that session, Claude said, yeah, do you want me to mock that up for you? See how it might look? They went back like, sure, why not? Yeah, okay, let's see how it looks. And so they went back and forth with Claude, all in Claude, just conceptual experimentation. What does this look like? And we ended up with an HTML page that looked amazing. It was perfect for the use case. And the FileMaker developer immediately said, I have no idea how to build that in FileMaker. It's not possible, like all these little things it was doing. And so they came to us on the web team and we said, well, we got ProofKit here. We know how to build web viewer apps, right? And they knew it, so they said, we're going to do this. So we went to ProofKit and they started with a card window. They said, here's a card window where we build out this thing and we help them integrate it. We said, here's what happens when you click new and and it opens the card window with the web layout. You hit save, it saves back to your FileMaker layout, all looking good. And they were having a blast. They're like, this is so cool. But then they had to ask that question, what if, I know this is crazy, but what if we just did the whole thing in web? Like, surely we couldn't, but the customer might come to us later and say, did you even try that? And so we'll give it a try. And I want to show you what they built actually in I think a weekend, maybe 2 weekends is what they told me. This is a web app that runs in WebDirect. And the resolution might look a little strange here because of the scroll bar, smaller screen on the presentation. And this is also in demo mode. This is the other crazy thing that I love about this app. This is a real, it's still in a dev server, but they have a demo mode feature that they just turned on. They said, yeah, go ahead and show our system to everyone because we want you to see how cool it is. This is full recent activity. I can go full into viewing all the users, all the contacts. This is a live FileMaker server too, by the way. Really responsive, loading all this data. Let me show you that quote line they were talking about. I don't even know how to build all this. Like, I don't know, Windows salesman. I want to build a combination double hang door, and maybe I want a sliding door. It has this panel, and then because of that, I'm going to pick this. Like all this web layout, right? That would have just been so hard to do in FileMaker, or take too long. And this entire web app got restructured into this web app that runs on WebDirect in like a couple weekends. Not very long at all. So hopefully, as Todd showed as well, you can do this too. He wants me to show dark mode. I don't know where it is in this app. Is it hiding somewhere? Or do you have a different question?
I was gonna ask you, did the developers who built this have any web experience before they did
No,
this?
not at
They
all.
have no web experience.
No web experience at all. These are FileMaker developers that built this. We gave them ProofKit and said, go try it. And they had the idea. We did give them a hint. We're like, you're not going to want to stick in a little web viewer in a card window for long. Like we told them not to do it. And they came back to us and they said, no, we just feel more comfortable this way. And I said, all right, fine. And later they came back and they're like, you were right. Yeah, this was amazing. I don't know if this app has dark mode actually. But the other thing it has, this is another cool thing. It has a guide. It built in a guide. This is stored as FileMaker tables, but this is teaching the customer how to use the system we built for you. Built right in on this little page right here. And it stores this as FileMaker records so they can update it. And then they're storing developer guides too for if a developer comes into the system, what does it need to know about how the pricing module works and all these things. The customer can come in and build custom mail templates, go through and it tells them their merge fields. They get to preview it with sample values and I don't know. It's all kinds. It just hopefully maybe this doesn't blow your mind because you've seen web apps that look like this before, but you can build them. You can build them. Does anybody believe me? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know what all this app can do. Like it's so huge. And I wish I could show you more specific, but they wanted to show this off because they wanted to show off that this is just so cool what you can build. So let me go back to my slides. We'll get back there. How do I do that? So a little bit about me real quick. My name is Eric Luce. Hello. I'm a senior software engineer at Proof Systems and Humans. I almost said Proof Geist again. Man, we're just changing this. I have been working in FileMaker for over 10 years and recently a lot into the web development side. And it's just like Todd said, as soon as you get that feeling of like what's possible with these AI tools, you'll feel just like when you first started discovering how cool FileMaker was. And the fact that we can tie them together is just even cooler. So how do we get started? Okay, what do you need? First of all, you just need to try it. Okay, I want you to be open to trying it. If any of you are skeptical, that is totally reasonable and understandable, but just try it anyway. Just give it a try. And then, as Todd said, dream bigger. You're not going to succeed unless you dream bigger than you've ever dreamed. It's gonna be possible. If you don't think it's possible, try it anyway. Right? This is the whole theme. And then probably the hardest part, and this is what I'm going to hopefully help with mostly today, is you need to find the right vocabulary. That'll help you get a little bit, you'll feel more confident in it and you'll get a little bit better results if you can say just the right words to Claude. Okay? If that's the part that you're worried about, hopefully I can help with. But over time, you're going to get used to that as well. So again, just give it a try. And find, I'm here all weekend, right? We can build something together if you want our assistance with it. Let's do it. So, and yeah, it just helps you ask more targeted questions too. But anything you don't understand, just ask. Just say, and even these FileMaker developers, they'll come to me and they'll say, yeah, I use all the time the shortcut ELI5. Does anybody know what that means? I didn't at first. Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. What in the world did you just do? Your coding agent just made this whole app. How does it work? I don't know. Ask it, right? If it makes a decision, you can ask nicely, why did you do that? I'm curious. Why does it work that way? Why not the other way? And it'll tell you the reason. And you might say, actually, that like weird edge case that you're solving for, I don't care about that. Make it work this other way. It's a little easier. That's all fine. It's all exploration and part of the deal. So let's dive in to a bit more practicality things. When you build a native FileMaker layout, your layout is there and your data is there all encapsulated. It's amazing about FileMaker. You drag the field on, you edit it's live editing. It's really simple to understand because you also get real-time updates. If somebody else changes the data, you get changed. When we're building in a web viewer, that's disconnected. The good news is every interaction within a web viewer interacts via a FileMaker script. And you all know FileMaker scripts. So the key thing to just always remember as we're building these web viewer apps is that your web viewer is isolated, but it can do anything it wants with a FileMaker script. So it calls to a FileMaker script, it gets some data, and it calls back. Okay? Everybody clear on that so far? Hopefully, maybe this, and some of this probably isn't new. If you've built anything with a web viewer before, you know this. But what this unlocks, if you think about it, is that web viewers are web apps. So you're building a web app here. You are becoming web app developers. If you've been at any of my other previous talks, I've been saying, oh, let me see if I can make FileMaker developers web developers. And now you guys have no choice. You're coming along with me, and it's going to be great. So this slide is just an overview of some of the concepts of web apps that I want to cover. And we'll stop along the way and ask questions, and I'll give a few demos as well. So things like Git. Todd talked about this a little bit. You need to just the concept of what is Git, what is this source control, how do I use it? Concept of front end versus back end. I heard a question about that in our last session as well. We'll show some UI libraries and themes. How can you make the web app look like whatever you want it to look like? And then we'll also go over a bunch of data loading techniques. When should you use scripts? When should you not use scripts? There's a pattern we like to call initial props. How does that work? Why do we use that? And the loading of large data kind of topic that we talked about as a challenge. So yeah, you don't really need to know how to build web apps. It's just important to understand some of these concepts and this vocabulary. So let's get started with Git. Git is what we call source control management. You're typically thinking of FileMaker as a file that is hosted on a server or lives on your desktop. And just like you're editing a Microsoft Word document, is right there, you're editing this FileMaker file, and that is your whole project. For Git, your project is a folder on your computer. It's just a folder. And that folder is actually usually a copy of the project. So if you're working with other developers or with other agents, really your project lives in a place called GitHub, which is a Git server that serves your project and hosts it. That becomes the authoritative source of your project, which is, again, just a folder of a bunch of files. So when your project lives on GitHub, that's my source of the project. And then the term for that is a repository or a repo, is what you'll probably often hear it called. All a repo is the folder of your project. So we're just talking about a folder of files. And then as you make changes to the copy that you have on your computer, there's a copy in the cloud, there's a copy on your computer, you're going to make changes and you're going to make what's called a commit. A commit is just a small collection of changes that says this file changed from this value to this value, and there's a history of what changed at what time, by who, and so on. You're going to make that change, you're going to commit that change, which is kind of like saving it, and then you're going to push that change to GitHub. Now GitHub has that change, and everybody's updated. If you're working with multiple developers, other people, right, might push to GitHub, and you will pull from GitHub. And then what happens if two people edit the same file? You do what's called a merge, where we merge two changes together, two commits together. You might make a new commit called a merge commit, whatever. And again, I hope none of this is, if any of this is going over your head, I want you to hear is the terms, right? And the concepts of I'm pushing the data, and you can tell Claude, can you do a commit? Save my work in GitHub. Tell it that, it'll do it all fine, right? But there's just concepts of where I'm going to merge these changes in. I want to pull, my coworker made some changes. I want to merge those in. Sometimes you might want to work on a branch, which is kind of like a copy of your folder, right? You can work over here and you can have commits that are going in parallel, and then eventually you merge those branches together. You'll have a concept of pull request. And this is an odd term for me, which I wish someone explained this one to me sooner. But before we had GitHub, right? Git is still just a folder. The project is the folder on your computer. And let's say because we don't have GitHub, it's my computer that is the authoritative source of the project. And so Alan would make some changes, and Alan would say, hey, Eric, can you pull in my changes to the authoritative source on your computer? And so he would send me an email called a pull request saying, pull my changes in. And that's just what GitHub helps us do, right? We're going up to GitHub and we're making, it feels weird because you're pushing the changes to GitHub, but it's called a pull request anyway.
GitHub's pulling it.
Because GitHub is pulling them from one branch to the main branch is typically why it is. And the cool thing about pull requests is that now we've got essentially, they always go between branches, right? But with GitHub, you have comments on your pull request, and you can have actions and other AI agents that are reviewing all of the changes that just happened in this pull request, which is usually more than one commit. So it's a bunch of changes packaged up. You can have a discussion with the agents, with your coworkers. You can have AI agents review it. You can run tests against your pull request. A whole bunch of things happen. Pull requests are really cool, but their naming is weird. So you just have to know what it's called and know kind of what it is, right? It's the request to merge the changes together. And the last Git concept that you'll see a lot, because it shows up in Claude Desktop, is this thing called work trees, which used to be a very scary concept and no one really used them. But now with agents, it's really important. All a work tree is another copy of the project. Everything's a folder, right? So we're just going to have another copy of that folder on my computer, and that becomes what's called a work tree. You can have lots of these, but the cool advantage of this is as we're working with teams of agents, each agent might get its own work tree. And so now it's reading all of its copy of the files. 4 different agents are doing it in each their own work tree. And then when they're all done, the orchestrator agent will merge them all back together. But this way, if they happen to edit the same file, they don't kind of step on each other. So they're all working on their own folder, their own files, and that's all good. So any other questions on Git? Any curious? Yeah, I don't know if we have Mike, but
Any security concerns about putting it on Git?
any security concerns about putting it on Git? I think you like GitHub. I don't think so. I mean, GitHub is like, this is just industry standard. GitHub is, and there's other, Git providers. There's lots of rules that you can apply when you have a server that's hosting your code. You can apply rules on that. So I don't necessarily have security concerns, but you can you can put more restrictions on it. You can say you have to be authenticated to read my repo, right? So
Right,
yeah,
make it private.
make it private repo. Exactly. Yeah. Did you have another question, or Alan? Maybe?
Any concerns about segmentation shows committing on the same exact feature changes to similar
So
features?
that is where planning comes into play here, because if you plan it right, that really just won't happen. Sometimes it does anyway. And this is where merge conflicts will come in. But the agents will figure all that out typically, right? It's not really a concern. If they conflict, the agent will figure out how to resolve the conflict and pick the right code so that you have both features, even though both agents touch the same file. Totally fine. Yeah.
Are there reasons and benefits to use Git if you're not working with a team of other people?
Are there reasons? Yes. Oh my goodness. See, this is why I didn't finish my slides. I knew you guys would have all the great questions. Are there reasons to use Git if you're not working with a team of people? Yes, because actually you are working with a team of people. You're working with your agent. And your agent is going to make a dumb commit. And you're going to want to say, hey, undo that, please. And you can find exactly what they changed. The agent will change like the files, and all the history of exactly what they changed gets tracked, and you can undo it, or you can view the history of it and all kinds of things. So absolutely, because actually we're not working by ourselves anymore. The agents are working with you and with each other. So everybody's a team, even if you're a team of one.
You can safely experiment on features.
That's right.
Making copies.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the other reason why Git is first. Like you can as you just said, you can safely experiment on new features. You can try new things. You can experiment. And this is another reason why, if you're still skeptical, don't be. Because ProofKit sets up the Git repo for you. You don't have to know how to do any of this. You can just try it. You just try it, and then you say, you tell the agent, I don't like that, undo what you did. And it will, safely. Like that's what Git is for. And you can try new things, make a new branch, and go crazy with it. And if you don't like it, throw that branch away. It used to be that writing code was hard, and so we would feel really bad about throwing the code away. But we can experiment way more things now until you find the right one, and that's all good. So nothing else, that's fine. We always come back and move on. So the next big concept is what we call front end versus back end. Now, to us FileMaker developers, we typically think of front end versus back end as like FileMaker Pro Client and FileMaker Pro Server, right? But it's a little bit different concept here, because what I'm talking about is more than that. It's about, where does this code run? Yes. Does it run on the client or does it run on the server? But what this really matters is, where does it run, and can the user who's running that code, can they see the code that's running? Can they maybe change the code that's running? That's what's really important here. When you're running in FileMaker Pro Client, if they don't have full access privileges, because they're on Zoom or on read-only access or something, right? They're not here. They can't make the changes, right? So it's a secure environment. You can store API credentials in your FileMaker script, because if they don't have full access, they can't see them, right? Does everybody follow? Right? So that's not really the same kind of concept. So when I talk about a front-end code or a back-end code, I'm talking about, is it a secure environment where the code is running? If the code is running on my computer or my server, not the user's computer, then that means it's back-end code. That means it's secure. I can put credentials there. If it's running on the user's browser, that's front-end code. There's other reasons why this matters. Security is one of the main reasons of it, right? And so I'll just finish the slide here. So FileMaker script is back-end, right? I think you were asking earlier about, like, does ProofKit understand what a front-end versus a back-end is, right? And in reality, when it comes to this concept, the agent isn't writing the backend code because that's the FileMaker script. Maybe one day it will when Clara ships their stuff, right? But like for now, it's only writing the web code, which is only the web viewer code. It's only the front end code. Okay, so again, two big things about front end versus back end. Main one is security. And this is one that I just want to stress really heavily as you're building these apps, because you're going to tell Claude, this is amazing. You're going to go crazy with it. And then you're going to say, hey, I have this API that I want to integrate with. Can you just write all that code too? Right? And maybe it knows the API. And so it goes for it, right? But the problem is that in order to do that, if it requires any sort of API token, that would have to go through the web viewer, because that's all the agent can write right now. It'll go through the web viewer, it might make the API call, it'll work, but then any intelligent user can just inspect the web viewer code and find your API key. So you just have to know that, and you have to know that the safe way to do it is in a FileMaker script. Okay, so I'm just going to stress that. That's the security thing. The other
So one quick thing.
Yeah.
Oftentimes the agents will refuse to do that.
They might, yeah. And so you just have to know about it. This is my whole point. Is like you just have to know they might refuse to do it. But if they do, you have to know why. Okay, it's got to be in a FileMaker script. The other reason is also about performance. Todd talked a lot about this as well, that like your layouts and all these display fields and the heavy relationship graph, like all the performance of that gets bogged down when you put it in the FileMaker quote backend. When you put it in the schema, when you put it in the scripts and the layout objects, that's all backend code that gets bogged down. And now every user connecting to that system feels the slowness. Same thing is true of other databases or other, if you're running, any other platform, the backend is shared by all the users. And so you kind of have to be really selective and careful about how much load do you put on the back end, right? You don't want to run all your scripts, perform script on server all at once, all the time, because then your server gets overloaded, right? So you have to be careful about that. And then okay, if I can write all this calculation logic and conditional display logic in my web viewer, now that's only taxing the user's computer. It's not taxing my server, right? So you've got this security, but also this performance trade-off. And you just have to decide sometimes, where is the best place to do this? Do I want to write all my caching logic right in a FileMaker script and save that somewhere because lots of users, like maybe that's the right choice, or maybe you want to do the calculation logic on the fly because you're using your user's resources, not your server's resources, right? So, okay, that's all about that. Any other questions on front end, back end? And I do have some other demos too, so we'll get into some of those. All right, now some fun stuff. Who wants to make their FileMaker app look good? Yeah, oh, it's so fun. So ProofKit ships with a component UI framework called ShadCN. I have no idea why it's called that. It's just what it's called. And it's the industry standard right now in web code about how to theme your files. And so there's a couple of websites I'll put up here on the screen, and I think I can post this slide deck somewhere so you guys can see them. And I'm going to show these websites here in a second. But ShadCN is the theming layer. It's CSS, but it's also components, and then you just tell your agent to use it. So I'm gonna do a quick demo of that in this app that I've built. And this is not nearly as exciting as Todd's app, but that is okay. So I'm gonna let's just launch it here. So this is just the customer's layout that I have, and I've applied some themes to it. If I go up to, I guess it's down here too, and my web direct timed out. So we'll go to tweakcn.com. This is a customizer. So you can just go to this website and you can pick, they've got a whole bunch of different like presets, which is probably all I'm going to do for the demo. So I'm going to make this perpetuity theme. It's got a whole different font, whole different set of colors. Doesn't look that pretty, honestly, but it's just going to work. And so I'm going to click this code button. I'm going to copy this command, and then I'm going to go up to my coding agent. And just for the sake of difference, I guess, because Todd showed you Claude, I'm going to show you Codex, because that's my favorite. And I'll say change the theme. No, wait, I got to type. Change the theme to this new preset. Boom. And I don't know if it's still running the dev server, because this is the same idea here. I think it's not, which is fine. So it's going to do all this. It's going to change the theme. I'm not going to have to touch any code. I'm just going to say, here's the theme I made, right? And this was a preset, but you could go back here and you could go and tweak all these values, right? You could pick all the colors, pick all the different typography for the headers or for the, or generate with AI your theme, whatever you want to do. And you fine tune this to make it, and then you save it and you pass it to your agent, say, this is the theme. This generates all the CSS for you. And this is just a nice way to look at stuff, right? And then we'll let it run. And again, like, you just have to ask your agent, but this is the type of thing. You need to know that everything's running ShadCN. You need to know that this is how you get themes. And then the other thing is about components. I'm going to ask, I don't think, yeah, see, this site went down. This was a cool site, and I don't know if it got hacked or something now. So I'll just show you shadcn.com, not that one. ui.shadcn.com. This is the create one. So this is like the official one. It's called the preset because it has a few extra things in there, like icon libraries. But if I just go to components, and you can see all the components that are just built into native stock ShadCN UI. We've got a data table. All right, this is my data table. It's got sorting, it's got scrolling, and you can read all about it. You can pick this. Okay, that's for right to left languages. You can go a hover card, hover here, and it hovers it, like whatever you want to do. And you can find stuff here, and then you can just copy the link to the page in the docs, kind of like I just did, and you tell your coding agent, use this component and build this thing, right? If you search ShadCN components, there's a lot of things you can do. I like this one called ReUI. Oh, that's the wrong one. That goes reui.io. Okay, this is another one. And ShadCN, it's more than just a component library. It's like an extensible system of component libraries. So if you search for anything that references the term ShadCN, you'll be able to get a pre-built component. And the helpful thing about this is you can tell that as you're working with the AI, it'll build its own component for you, and sometimes that's great. But if you stick with a component library kit like this, it'll feel like dragging it down from the top of the layout bar. It's like, oh, this is a known component that I know how it works, and it's been tested and like works with accessibility and all these like cool things. And so, yeah, this is just another one that's got that you can. Some of them are paid, some of them are free. This is like their whole thing. So there's just a ton of components, and I just want to show you that these are out there and how to search for them and find them, and then ask your agent to do it. Let's see. Do you think it finished the embedded browser refused the local host? Oh my goodness, that's so sad. Oh well. But there it goes. Yeah, it's here. There it is. Yeah. So there's the new theme, right? It doesn't look quite like the other one because I don't think it's respecting my background colors, but I could just tell it that. I say, hey, fix my background. I want it to be a little darker. I don't know. Or I want to add light mode and dark mode support in my app, and I want it to default to whatever the user's device default is. So if they are a light mode user, they never see dark mode. But if they like dark mode, they get dark mode by default with that. You can say that. Just tell it what you want, and it'll do these kind of things. And same for themes. Any other questions on that? I don't know if that's, we'll see. But yeah.
So you're talking about telling it to use a component from one of these sites. Could you just start at the beginning and say, if you need any components, pull it from this site?
Yes. And some of that's already built in. It should know by default the template has ShadCN set up, right? So it's going to know that it can look at ShadCN's repository of components to find new components, and it should use those. But sometimes if you want something specific, or if you want a little bit different look, you just have to know how to ask, right? And so that's all I'm trying to show. Because yeah, anything's possible. This is why it's like so hard to teach this anymore, because you just got to try it and you'll see that it works. So anyway, yeah. Any other questions on themes? And then I'll say deploy the FileMaker. I'm sorry, I'm typing. Right, but this is just so cool because I want to see this change in FileMaker. So I will deploy. It's so nice, and then we should see this just update, but we'll see. I didn't. Oh, I didn't. I forgot. It's because I was typing and I was using shorthand. I often forget to say please and thank you in my text messages too. I should be dictating my text messages more often. And so that'll probably take a second as it builds everything. Let's see. So, oops. So when should you use scripts? If you can build everything with AI, when is it important to use scripts? Well, actually, everything's a script. Remember from the beginning, the only way the data viewer can do anything is it calls a FileMaker script. And most of the time, what it's calling is a script in the solution called execute data API. It's a pretty generic script, but the web viewer knows how to call that with a data API structured request, which could be a create, update, delete, whatever. It'll call that script and it will get back the result. And that's what it'll do most of the time by default. It's calling a script anyway. So if you don't want to use the data API, if you want to use a regular FileMaker find, let's say, to do some stuff, or maybe you want to do a giant transaction, you're going to have to write your own script. Oh, I'm behind on my slides. Okay, every data API request is already a script. Okay, everything's a script. And only one script can be running at a time. So this is the other trade-off you have to be aware of. If the script, you do want to try to avoid not stacking up your scripts too much. Has everybody ever opened the data viewer and noticed there's like 10 scripts that stack up, right? Because everybody knows you can only run one script at a time. So you have to be cautious of when you run scripts and when you don't run scripts. Or if you can, combine scripts together. If it's going to do a lot of different operations at once, you might want to combine that into one operation. Some of this comes with trial and error. You're just going to have to just understand and decide when do I need to kind of speed this up with a script. So a couple key things where I say you should always use a script is transactions or editing multiple records. Does everybody love transactions here too? Are we yeah? Okay. If you're not using transactions already, oh my goodness, you're missing out. Anyway, transactions are cool. We'll talk about that later. Anytime you edit multiple records, especially across multiple tables, you need a transaction. So just use it and then call the script. Write a script that does that. And then anytime you need a backend function, as we talked about earlier, if you're making an API call, that's got to be done in a script. So you must use a script. But there's one catch. When you're calling a script from the web viewer, you cannot leave the layout unless you want to leave the layout. But if you're coming back to the web viewer, if the user is just doing an action, don't leave them on some data API layout, right? You have to, if you need to leave the layout for any reason, you can't run it on server, you want to run it on client, then make sure you open a new window first. Yeah. It'll call, so this is the thing that may improve. Again, we're focused on are the models smart enough to use modular scripts? I believe they will be, but the problem right now is that we're focused on the web UI, right? So all you're telling your agent is the name of a script to run and what parameters to pass it. It doesn't, it can't even really read what the script does. It can read the output of the script if you wrote the script right. And I'll jump out and show that in a minute. I might just do that now real quick because this is probably a critical thing to understand. So, because we didn't show the core of it. So in my ProofKit file, I'm going to go in this ProofKit folder. These are the scripts that get installed when you add the add-on to your file, as Todd showed. And there's a couple example scripts here that show how this works, but I'm going to first just look at the execute. No, I'm not. That was too complicated. Okay, so this example script is what you will use when you write a custom script that you want to be called by the web viewer, like a transaction. This is a template that you copy the contents of this script or the script itself, whatever, and then you have to leave this header part in here and this body part in here and then update anything inside. Because this is the only way that what happens is it's going to call, the web viewer will call this script, and then when it's done and you save something to this result variable, it will then call this send callback script to call back into the web viewer to say, I'm done, here's the data of the result. Because otherwise the web viewer won't know, right? And I think other people have built systems like this. So this isn't necessarily a new concept, but if you're building web viewer apps the first time, right, you have to understand there's that initial limitation where a web viewer can call a script, but it can't by default get the result back from that script. So you have to wrap every script you write in this template, which is what we provide here for you. And in between these lines, you cannot leave the layout, because if you do, then it won't be able to call back to that web viewer because the layout context is all gone. So does that all make sense so far? Or hopefully, I don't know if anyone has seen this, but like that's just a critical thing to understand. Pause for questions. Yeah.
Do you use a lot of forms from server with callback?
Yes. Well, it depends. It seems really good, and then there are times where it catches you. So I can touch on that if you want, because the problem with the callback is that sometimes the user might be on a different layout. Now, this is not a problem, by the way, if you only have one layout in your file. Can anybody guess what you should put on that one layout? A web viewer, right? So that actually won't be a problem. If you have one layout on your screen and you never open any card windows, and you all do that in web dialog, if that's all that happens, the callback should work great. Because the problem we keep running into is that like if you have a web viewer in one window, but the user also has another window open up here, you're never sure what window the user is on when the callback runs. And so then
you've got the window UID now, you can test it to run that area.
You can there's just that's the thing you can like work around and get to, but that's just a thing you need to know, right? So I'm just calling it out that like you have to be careful where it comes back. And sometimes it's also worth testing because it's not always faster to run it on the server. Sometimes you find, for all kinds of reasons, you might want to test it. And sometimes it's better on client, sometimes not. Yeah.
So maybe to ground this in old FileMaker techniques and lore, we've all had many, many reasons why when we do some long running process, we take the user elsewhere, right? And we've been doing that forever. The off-screen windows, card windows, perform script on servers. And this isn't really a new thing, but it's just something you have to know about. It's another, like there used to be like, if you took somebody to a different layout and came back, the tab viewer would have reoriented, right? So you wouldn't leave the layout. Even if they never saw it, the tab viewer would switch. So we've been doing this for years. And this is just another reason or another way in which we can still use that old lore just to get around this so that the web viewer never closes. Because your web app has the user state in it, where page they're on, what fields they've entered, any changes they've made. And if you close that, if you go somewhere else and close that web viewer, even if you come back super fast, that whole web page is going to redraw, right? So that's the reason. You're just giving your script a different context to work in. Use a new card window works great, or perform script on server works great for those kinds of things.
So it's not just don't leave the layout, but also don't leave the layout and don't refresh the web view.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
you don't want to refresh the web viewer either. Yeah, you usually want to leave that alone. And I think you'll see this next example I'm going to talk about is this initial props concept. I think you'll see this in a bit more in action too. But I want to just quickly touch back on the like modular scripts idea that you said. So again, the agent it can inspect a little bit about your database, about your schema, and it can learn like what fields are on certain layouts. If you tell it the layout, go inspect this thing, but it can't necessarily read your scripts. And so it doesn't know what a modular script is. And if it calls a script that doesn't have this in it, it'll spin. It'll be like, well, it never called back. I don't know what the script is, right? So that's, again, you just have to know, you have to write your scripts in this manner. You have to return ideally as fast as possible with the result, right? And then what you do in here, hopefully that's a modular script, but it can call other scripts. You can have a whole nested tree of scripts that call scripts, right? Within these two things, right? Totally fine. And ideally they just don't leave the layout or refresh the web viewer. So, all right. So should we move on to initial props? What does that mean? I don't know. Initial props. So a lot of people, we gave this example because it's so useful in a lot of cases. And the primary one is navigation. So when you first try ProofKit, you're going to try it in a little thing because you don't believe me you can build the whole thing. You can, I promise. So you're going to try it in a little thing and you're saying, well, that's cool, but now I need another one over here, right? And I might need another one for this widget over here, and you're going to make lots of apps. And you can try that if you want. No one's going to stop you, but you're going to have a better experience if you make one web viewer. So how do you make multiple screens within the web viewer? Well, let me remind you that web viewers are web apps, right? Web apps have pages, and you can have multiple pages within your web app. Nobody questions that. So all you have to do is design your web app in such a way that can have these multiple pages. And then what you might want to do, based on a script menu command or some other dashboard, maybe they're coming in, if you want to navigate the web viewer via a FileMaker script in any fashion, then you might want to use this initial props lating for navigation. So I have this example here. Actually, I have a real one because I wrote this get initial props. There's some documentation in it that shows you can tell it still has the same kind of header and footer and these two lines, but all it's doing is it's checking for this global variable of a mode that says what mode should I be in, and then it sets this initial route variable to say if I'm in customers mode, then I can go to customers. If I'm in initial route mode, I go to invoices or whatever. If you just change. And then you can have a script here that says I want to launch my customers layout or launch my invoices layout. And if I just click this, I run this script, you can see that I'm going to view the customers layout. And I'm going to close this because I didn't write this to reuse the same window. And if I run the invoices script, the web viewer starts on that invoices layout, right? This is the behavior that you probably want. And there's a lot more stuff you can do with initial props. For example, who is the user? What device are they running on, right? Are they running this in WebDirect or not? All those kind of things are FileMaker calcs. Just run all those calcs in the initial props script and return it to the web viewer. I have a slide that kind of walks through the process of this. So let me jump to that.
It's also documented on the website.
Yeah, all this is documented as well. But I just want to, it's a really helpful example. So in the navigation example, what first thing that happens is the web viewer launches on the layout. If you noticed in my script, I didn't tell the web viewer, all I said was that global variable to say, and then I just launched a window on the layout. That's all I did. There's no script triggers on the layout. It's just a web viewer that loads. So the web viewer loads on the layout, and you might have seen it shows a little spinner. During that spinner, it calls a FileMaker script called, in this case, get initial props. And when that script is done, FileMaker says, here's the page you want to land on. And the web viewer says, oh, okay, let me navigate to that page. And then the spinner ends. Oops, I lost all my stuff. Okay, so, and again, you can do more with this, but the concept is critical here, and it's very much a useful thing. If you want to show any data about that page too could also be preloaded, right? So if you want to start combining scripts, if they're going to the invoices layout, maybe show them the first 50 invoices, right? If that's what they're going to see, and then pass that to the initial props, and the web viewer can be even faster and only has to call one script instead of two, right? So Todd has more questions or comments.
Just another way to frame this is if you find yourself thinking like, okay, when I display this web viewer, this app, I need to get a bunch of information into the app. Basically, initial properties. Like when this web viewer boots up, what initial data should it have? This is a very common thing that you use actually inside of web apps, regular web apps too, depending on who's logged in often. Like you might have to put in their username, emails, you might put extended privileges, you load all that information so that your UI can respond to whatever users log in, or preloading data, as Eric said. But so it basically answers that question of, hey, when I come to this web viewer layout, I need a bunch of data in there before it loads. That's what get initial props is. How do I get initial properties into the web page?
Yeah. And once you get that concept, you'll find more uses for it over time. Because often as FileMaker developers, we like to think in the reverse. Well, you want to think in FileMaker scripts first, because that's what we're so comfortable with. I want to go to this web viewer, and then I want to tell the web viewer to do something. But it's actually in reverse that works better, because if you just have the web viewer ask when it's ready, then you return the initial props via that, and it just shows a spinner in the meantime. It works a lot better. And the main reason for that, and again, this is just a common thing if you've worked with web viewers, is the web viewer has this window.FileMaker.perform script feature in it that doesn't get injected until like a second after the web viewer is loaded on the layout, right? And so often if you do this from a script where you just go to layout, perform JavaScript in web viewer, it will fail because it wasn't ready to receive that JavaScript yet. That whole function wasn't set up yet. And so then you have a pause in your script, and that's no good, right? So what this does in the reverse is the web viewer, you just let the web viewer initialize, and when it's ready, when it's got all the stuff that FileMaker injects that make this work, then it asks. And that doesn't take very long, but this kind of helps you get around that problem, right? If anyone's ever ran into that before, that's like the reasoning behind why we do this. So any other questions on that or question use cases? I've only got like one more slide. It's so simple. We can keep going. So how do you load lots of data? And the first answer to that is don't, is the main thing. Oh, this is the thing that it's one of these things when I work in web development a lot, like building web apps. There's a reverse way of how you probably have to think when you're building web apps, because a pretty common thing in FileMaker to do is go to layout, show all records, perform find, maybe omit what I need, right? Things like that. That's pretty common, right? We do that a lot because it's so easy to do. And sometimes the logic is just easier to think about narrowing down your found set that way. But when you're building a web app, web viewer or otherwise, you can't show all records and then omit. You have to find what you need, right? And you have to think in that reverse way, because otherwise you're going to sit through and spin and get all the records. So a vast majority of the cases where you think you want to show all records, you don't, right? we're used to that with FileMaker. We just go to a list view, right? Show all records and it works fine. But it doesn't work fine in web viewers, so you have to do the reverse. I have a couple of examples of that, which I can show in my file. Maybe. Okay, so in the customer's layout, this customer's layout has 92,000 records in it. Let me just right click and reload the web viewer. Because that works, right? I forget. Did it already? It was probably already that fast. Oh, I was in invoices because I was in invoices mode. Okay, but did you see how fast I loaded 92,000 records? Right?
You didn't load.
But it's because I didn't load 92,000 records. Okay, I only loaded 50. Okay, and as I scroll, it starts to load. This is probably now the nature of Wi-Fi because this is a hosted file. So as I scroll, it's actually going to load more records, right? And that I'm just getting a beach ball because I'm not running in WebDirect, honestly. Because it's running a script, right?
Yeah, just to be clear, this is exactly what a native FileMaker layout does, right? It only fetches 50 records ahead at any time.
Right.
So the agents do know how to make this. It's called infinite scroll.
Yeah.
And they, agents know how to build this stuff. And there's examples of it. So you can do this when you need it. There are techniques to do that kind of stuff. So, and again, it's just doing what FileMaker does, just built into the web code.
Yeah. But you have to know to ask for that, right? And that's why I'm showing it, because by default, if you say, I want to show all records on this layout, it will fetch them all for you. And they say, no, actually, I don't want all of them. You have to be clear. I want you to do infinite scrolling. I want to be able to scroll through all of them and not actually see them. And then you just ask your agents these things, but you notice in this case, I didn't implement this sorting features of here, because if you're going to do that, well, then you need to know which 50 to show first, right? And so you have to build that into the query. You can do all that totally fine. And then I'll show search but you have a question first. Yeah.
Have you implemented pagination on?
That's what this is.
Well, it's infinite scroll.
It's pagination. It's pagination that doesn't show pages, is all. Like that's what it is, literally. You're saying, give me 50 records, and then it's just that I'm using these magical events of JavaScript that instead of me having to click next page, because you can absolutely build a table that way, very easy to do, and a lot of users expect that. That is the easier way to do it, honestly, because then it's a little bit, sometimes that's a better experience, because as I'm scrolling, I just get a beach ball. That feels weird, maybe, right? So depending on your system. But yeah, you can absolutely just do pagination. But technically, this is pagination. That's all I'm doing. I'm just paginating for you as you scroll, because it looks cooler sometimes. Anyway. So yeah, so then if you need a search, right, you can build a search. And this is, in this case, this is a separate page called the search customers page. And I can type Todd, and then it searches, right? And now I can still get all these things, but without having to load all the records. And now it actually searched and found all the Todds without me having, oh, Todd Geist is in here. Amazing.
Who's that?
I don't know. Yeah. See a question over here.
So to get that infinite scroll, did you have to prompt it in some special way?
Let me show you my chat. I did this earlier today. It's in one of these. Add. I mean, I did tell it specifically what to do, but I think if you just describe the behavior, you're going to get the same thing. It has to load, though. This is what I said. Replace the ProofKit app here, because this is the blank template. I just said, replace everything. I just want to start fresh. Replace here and use this reUI table. Show me a list of customers. Use infinite scrolling techniques by loading only 50 records at a time. And I pasted it this specific data grid component I wanted. That's it. That's all I did. Yeah. So again, if you knew, and now if you didn't know the word infinite scrolling, you could probably describe it with longer language and it would still figure it out. This is just a little bit nicer and you'll get used to this over time.
One of the things that screen reminded me of the question that Alexi asked earlier about doing finds.
Yeah.
In the last version of FileMaker, we got this perform find by natural language. But one of the things that actually had is it'll actually do any FileMaker query it can do as a JSON array. So you can actually give the specification, which is just the data API request and specification, and the agent could build you a beautiful search screen that would model all of that stuff. Because at the end of the day, it's just a JSON object that gets called, and you can actually pass it to that perform find with JSON. You get your found set, and then you can just return that. So you can build pretty much any kind of find you want into the system just by asking for it.
Yeah. So this is what we're saying, like dream bigger. I'm probably not even showing you the best kind of things we could build. Like that Royal Windows web app is probably the most ambitious thing we've got right now in production, right? But if you just dream about it, and once that works, dream bigger and try again, just ask. Yeah. Sorry, there's another question behind you. Oh.
How do privilege sets work? So
they work exactly the way you think they do. Because we're running FileMaker scripts. That's all we're doing.
Okay, but at the UI.
Yeah.
Right.
Whoever's logged into the file will run scripts under their permissions.
Okay, but let's say you want to hide a field.
Initial props. Figure out who I am and pass that to the web viewer as initial props, and then hide it.
Well, you could do it.
That's one way. Yeah.
You could do it using FileMaker privileges.
Yeah.
Right? Again, like this is the key thing.
Everything we're doing is running inside of FileMaker in the permissions that you have. So you could even use record level access if you wanted to, and that would all apply. Right. So it's again, like we are just running inside FileMaker security. There's no need for you to have to learn anything else. Now you may have to change a little bit how you think about applying that to the UI. But you get control over exactly what's in the UI. So you can do that in any way that you want. But you can always just rely on the privilege set. Do record level access, field level calculations, all that stuff would work.
Yeah. And the key thing I should mention when it comes to front end, back end too, your security lives in your FileMaker scripts. So if it's about visualizing something, like if they're not allowed to see this button and like if they see the button, it would breach your security. I mean, that's not really practical, right? But what happens is they shouldn't be able to click the button, right? So in the UI is JavaScript. You have to think about that as like it's front end code. It's running on the user's computer. They could tamper with the JavaScript and maybe they could get that button to display even though you told it to hide. But when they click that button, it's going to run a FileMaker script, and your FileMaker script is going to determine, hey, you shouldn't be clicking this button. And so that's where the security comes in. It's all in the back end, and that's important to know, right? Yeah.
So another FileMaker feature that's darn handy is that you can only run one script at a time. But users can double click, and browsers are more responsive typically. So is that an issue? Can you, by default, FileMaker will pause a currently running script or resume mode, pause script.
Yeah, I believe by default, every script it runs, I mean, it adds to the stack. I don't know if it queues them up.
Yeah, you can give it the other options.
You can say, I want you to interrupt the script and run this one first and all that stuff. That's where like it might be useful to do perform script on server with callback because that doesn't spin, there's all sorts of different ways to do it for sure. Or if you want to get real advanced, you can also call other APIs. You can trigger something on your FileMaker server instead, or some other server. Like there's just all kinds of ways, but that's probably advanced.
I think maybe the simplest thing is the agents are very good at this. If you click a button that calls a script, you can just tell the agent that button should not be, you can put a spinner icon
on the button.
You just say, hey,
don't allow them to double click.
Put a spinner and disable it. And when the script is done, hide the spinner and re-enable it, and that'll work.
Yes.
So all that stuff is there. And it's way easier than doing it on FileMaker level, where you have to like really work hard to get that kind of feature to work.
Yeah.
This is a question we wanted to ask for the last 2 sessions, including this one. And I think it's during at this moment thinking about record level security, for example.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about FileMaker as environment and a backend for a fundamentally web technology front end. And so I'm curious how it compares in performance to scalability and garden variety performance to other technologies that are more commonly used for web backend.
So at the small scale that most FileMaker apps run at, vast majority of the cases, there's really no difference, right? You're not going to notice the slowness of FileMaker, especially if you clean up your relationship graph and have like a very pure, just my data tables and my simplest relationships. Got some echo somewhere. So in that regard, should I wait till, is that bothering anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay, let me wait a minute. Am I concerned about record level
No,
security?
it's
Not
actually
really.
gonna be better.
It's gonna be better
Because
because,
you're only fetching like 50 at a time or something.
yeah,
So, you know, the problem with record level access, like if you ever do a browse on like 100,000 records, it's not gonna work in the UI, right? It's just gonna be a big mess. But with the web UI, with the web request, it's basically making web requests, it's just gonna filter those out. So if you get 50, you'll get the 50 that it has access to. And it's only fetching 50 at a time.
The first 50.
Yeah, that's
Well,
right. So that's what's all.
it does still, it's important to do a query because I think it will have to check each one. If you just say find all records, but then they're limited, it's still better to say find me records that I own, right? Like add that to the query because then it will use that first, which is a faster index.
Yeah.
That is still true. But in case they turn off that query, because that's the thing that they could do. They could say, well, and this is where it all matters, right? If they should can edit the JavaScript that's calling and adding that parameter of their user ID, if they can delete that or change it to a different user ID, your backend script has to enforce it. And that's where record level access would enforce it, right?
One other thing I could say broadly about like web technology and database optimization is the number one rule of making your web app faster is don't hit the database. That's it. Like I don't care if you're using, you know, Amazon Aurora. If you want the fastest performance on the planet, you don't hit that database. You hit some kind of caching layer, right? So all web apps that are running today, if they need performance improvements, they do it with some kind of cache. And what ProofKit sets up is a very sophisticated caching layer that's inside of the web viewer that manages stale data and fetching data when it's optimal to do so, not overfetching when that would cause too much problems. So it basically does what you would consider industry standards. Now, like we said, you know, the fetching lots of records is where you're going to run into this problem, and it would be where you run into this problem with any backend, and you would have to optimize it with better queries, with better whatever. So that's still, all that stuff is still true.
Yeah, and again, that's the key thing. It's the true of any database.
Yeah.
This is what when we build in other technologies, we still have the problem of don't hit the database unless you have to, right? So same is true of FileMaker. There's no difference though. Yeah.
Yeah, do you have any experience either in prototyping a real application deployment where you're taking FileMaker data and packaging it up with a pre-made prompt and sending it either to a cloud-based or local LLM, and having the data returned be dynamically displayed in like a web view, so that you're basically creating an AI-based report?
Sure.
Is that something you've done? And I mean, I assume it would work. I just wondering if
I don't think I have personally, but it absolutely ProofKit did that. Yeah, Todd can talk more on that specifically, but
so this is getting into what I would call generative UI, which is definitely a thing, and I think we'll probably do some examples of it at some point here. But the MCP servers in particular support this, where they can query backend systems for data, and they can decide that the best way to present this data is with a chart, and it can generate the chart on the fly or the report on the fly. And so nobody designs it, it's not stored anywhere, it's actually generated as part of that conversation with the LLM. So that is something that is getting more and more common, and you could totally do this with ProofKit. There's look at things like JSON Render would be one of the libraries that would allow you to do this. It's really cool.
I'm just going to show, before we run out of time, I'm going to come back and show the website that we had. Todd showed this earlier. This is the documentation. And I don't think you mentioned this, Todd. So at the bottom of any page of the docs, there's this LLMs full. And that is really just to remind you that the AI can read the docs too. So this getting started guide, you might want to read, watch the video, get started. But then when you want to do something, especially in this web viewer apps section, it talks a lot about these different guides. Like here's this initial props. And so you can just say, open this in Claude, and it pops open a link. All it's going to do is a link. Read this page, and I want to ask questions about it. Right? Or you just paste it and say, help me implement this in my ProofKit project. Link to the docs. And then the AI will read all the docs that we've written. And to be honest, we've written the docs more for the AIs than for you. Just let the AI read it. And like, this is again, I just want to give you the vocabulary. Go to the docs, add a link if it's doing the wrong thing, and tell it, do this thing that the proof people told me you could do really well. And it will. It will just do it. And so there's a couple other things in here. I think there's a reference on, where am I at? I think there's a reference on like some of the things that it does. I forget where this is, maybe under architecture. Where does it talk about TAN-stack query? Like it'll be able to, the other thing is it'll see, yeah. A lot of these things it will just see because the template we set up for you is a standard web project that it understands. It almost, there's a few extra little bits that we've put in there that say, hey, here's what FileMaker is, here's what I call a script, a few other like skills and prompts. But otherwise, it's web technology. It is very standard fare stuff that the agents know very well. And so you can just ask it and ask it how it works. How is this data loading? How is it being refreshed? What if I want to, because that's the other key thing, it's not live updating data. You have to just know that. It's generally not as much of a problem as you might think, but it's important to know that like, hey, if somebody else changes that record, the other user's web viewer probably didn't pick that up immediately. And so you may have to say, build a refresh button in it, or hey, refresh that data more frequently, or all kinds of other things, but just ask it. Yeah.
And to be clear, you can tell it to refresh every.
You can say, hey, this particular query, this is like real time. So refetch it every second.
It'll run a script every second then.
It'll run a script every second, but it'll do it. So typically it has like the default for how the caching layer works is very good, but you can fine tune it and you don't have to know how to. You can just say, hey, I'd like this to update more often, or this one I don't want you to update. This data never changes. So don't bother, just leave it in here for the whole day and it will never make that request after the first time. So all that stuff is done pretty well.
Okay, so we're almost out of time. I think we have time for one or two more questions or a few more questions. I saw, did you have a question?
To ask you guys.
I was gonna ask if in your guys' apps that you build, you use the mod ID or the application count to handle publics?
Yeah.
Yes,
you can do that. You can. I don't know if you're asking if we specifically do it yet. When it matters, we do, right? Like a lot of times it doesn't matter that much. But yeah, you can absolutely do that, and that's important. So yeah, use it. That's what it's for. Yeah, I don't have any other slides. So yeah, just any questions until I get booted off the stage or something. I don't know. Until we have to go dinner.
A version control question. Do you recommend storing the FileMaker file or an XML representation of the file in repo?
No.
Okay. How do you keep those in sync? Like, you need to restore that whole project.
Yeah, so the answer no is really because it's not a great way to do it right now. We'll have to see
whether that's something we can do in the future. I would certainly like to be able to store all the source code together in one place. We have a system that we built into AutoFMS and our automatic cloud service where you can run quote unquote projects where you can save XML snapshots, and we're going to try to extend that to also include web code. So this is an area that I think, we bugged Claris into building this in. The next thing we're going to try to bug Claris into is building in version control so that we can do this all in one place. So, but that's next. But yeah, so that's something, you just kind of have to deal with. Now, if you use something like Auto, or if you build something like that, having the idea of checking in the code, just download a clone of the file. All you need is the clone, really, and into your same project folder. Then you're doing something like that. This is sort of the best you can do at the moment. But yeah, definitely something that future work would be great to have.
The reason why you don't do that is just because of the size of the save as XML.
Yes, the save as XML is not really very difficult. So there's people doing exploders, and you've seen some of these exploders that make a copy of the XML in a folder structure, which is better for Git. And we are exploring those types of things. So I just don't think the XML itself is not that useful as a diff. If you've seen it in GitHub, it's terrible, right? Like it's not really of value. So we're just not. At least if you've got the clones in there, there are tools that can diff, or you can use FM comparison to do diffing. So if you need it, at least you've got it in there. and the clones are relatively small. Typically, clones are smaller than the Savers XML, at least once it gets beyond a certain size.
And it's not about. You were asking about like how do you reconstruct the file? Like it's not useful reconstructed from the XML either. Like that you have backups or you have clones also. Yeah, that's why I said like that.
The other thing is, we have a separation between front end and back end. Right? So the front end code is that folder full of stuff, and you're making a lot of changes there. You will find that you'll do less and less in the back end. You will still do back end work. You'll work on your scripts and you'll work on your tables and things. But if you think of it in your head as this is my back end code, this is my front end code, I would call it a band-aid, but it's a way to manage that. And you write your front end feature so it works with the current version, then you make a new back end version, then you write the new front end feature. It's not great, but that's what we have right now.
So we're thinking about the front end, back end. Does separation model make any sense?
Well, you've got separation model. It's just built in. I mean, you literally have a chunk of HTML that is your front end, and it's separate, it's completely separate. It's unconnected to your back end by any hard reference that used to be caught. It is the cause of most of the problems with problem FileMaker solutions are because of the fact that the back end and front end are melded together. That's the 1600 table occurrence graphs you've all seen. So you have separation. This is a separation. Yeah.
Separate data files, you do that for backups to be different backup.
Well, is anybody, if we're done, I hope that we just encourage you to give this a try. And are we done?
Just saying this is wonderful.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you. I hope like I said, don't decide if it is or it isn't. Give it a try. And give it a little more than like a day. Like give it a couple days. Try some things. Not only is there good documentation, there's also there's a community that we have at community.proof.sh where you can ask questions about ProofKit, and people there will help. And we'd love it if you share. We're getting people are sending us, their success stories and their just how happy they are that they can build the UI that they have always wanted, and that seemed out of reach and now it isn't, and they feel really good about that. So we'd love to hear if that happens to you. If you get excited, please share it, because I think there's a number of everybody's at a different place on their AI journey, and some folks, I know there are people here who've never done, really haven't done any coding at all with AIs, and there are others that have been doing it all the time. And so don't assume that your excitement is like old news to everybody. Like, share it, because you never know whether you're the person that inspires somebody else to give it a try and to spread what we think is some pretty awesome stuff with other folks in the community. Everything that you go through is your journey, and everybody has to go through their own. And one way that we do that is by sharing our journeys with each other. That's how we do it. That's how we do it in this community. Is one journey at a time, one developer at a time. And it all adds up and it all matters. And for some of us, we've been doing this for like 30 years or more. And it's crazy. But here we are. So keep at it. And, share what you do, share your learning, share your problems. Hopefully share your joy. That's what we would love to see. So thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. And I want to say thanks to Eric and Open Spirit on this. I really put a lot of effort into making ProofKit what it is. A lot of the libraries under the hood, and just the struggles with getting it to the shape where we think it can, really be valuable. So Eric did a great job. So, now I am done with all of my presentations. So you might have to listen to me sing later. It was great.
All right. So we're still broadcasting. Yeah, but it's.
That's funny.
Yeah. Hey, say hi.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Is there?
I told
Hi,
her.
everybody.
I know. I told her to watch it. I wasn't sure she'd log in or not.
Yeah,
But
she did.
She was like, "I want to see your session."
Oh, nice.
I was like, go ahead.
Yeah, I saw the family for a little bit.
Probably was. So I'm like,
I think you have the baby, right?
yeah. So big boys. So yeah.
So I don't know if she's fell asleep
Yeah.
or what, but
Well, we're dealing with the kids probably. So yeah, I'll call her a little bit later.
yeah, but she did get to see it.
Yeah, that's fun.
Hey Tony, here's I'm gonna.
Hey, so
Here we go.
I'm looking forward to the Under the Hood tomorrow. Who's the moderator for that?
That's me, Dave Simpson. Yeah,
You ready?
I've been talking with the engineers. We're gonna have Clay. We're going to have Derek Lee and Derek Wang, who we've probably never met before. So they'll be on my panel, all three of them. And so we'll get to learn some nice, interesting under the hood info.
Are they presenting or are they I mean, are they responding to questions or they're just presenting or both?
They'll be responding to questions. They're not really presenting.
Okay. Do you have like a big stack of questions for them?
I've got a couple to start, and I just came up with another one that I want to ask. So I want to go talk with them at dinner. So like I say, I'll probably have one or two starter questions, and then we'll, open it up to the audience. And if we run out of questions, then we'll see if I've got some more that I can come up with. But I don't think we're going to run out of questions.
Well, good. You got a good crowd out there.
Yeah.
I'm sure I know Jesse Barnum always has some very technical questions he's trying to sort out.
Yeah, he was going to do some testing on OData and come up with a question today, but he didn't get a chance to do that testing. But I think we'll touch on OData because I'm going to talk a little bit about ODBC, and I found that they fixed the problem with ODBC on Windows 11 ARM. And that will segue into the fact that in the future...
You're in charge of these guys. Back. I got to go pick up a student.
Oh, okay. Well, I was getting ready to go to eat. So.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't want to hold you guys up. I'll be joining you tomorrow, but
we can hear. Let's stop the recording if we haven't already.
Yeah. But anyhow, I just wanted to give them a little taste of tomorrow's first under the hood session, and then part of the idea is if we come up with some questions that the guys aren't able to answer right away, they'll go research the answer so that we will hopefully have an answer for Sunday's session.
Okay. See you guys.
Okay. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Have fun.
Yep.